Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone, or perhaps even good evening, everyone. It's great to see so many of you already here for ELTOC Chapter 4. Nice to be with you all again. It's nice to have so many people live, but hello if you're watching the recording. Sorry you couldn't join us live, but I hope you enjoy the recordings and enjoy what's coming up over the next few hours. I'm sure you all knew who I am. I'm Sean, and I'm coming to you live from Oxford. First of all, let's do a roll call. Where are you all joining us from? We're about 10 minutes away from the first speakers getting online, so come and tell us where you're from. Say hello. And here we go. Hello to Turkey. We've got Turkey coming up. I can see so many different nationalities coming up through the chat box. You can see there we got Algeria, Sicily. There's so many comments. Obviously we can flash some of the ones on the screen, but there's so many comments coming up. Hi Vietnam, how are you doing today? So before we get going, today's ELTOC is just one of the services that Oxford University Press offers to teachers. So as we get going, I thought you might like to know a little bit more about Oxford University Press. So Oxford University Press is the world's authority on English language teaching, and as part of the University of Oxford, it is committed to furthering English language learning worldwide. It's continuously bringing together experience, expertise and research to create resources helping millions of learners to achieve their English potential. And we will be going live to the first talk with Mark and Ed in about 8 minutes. But I'm sure there is one question you're already ready to ask me, and is how do I get a certificate? So let's have a little look at how we get a certificate from this event. You will be able to get a certificate for the whole of Chapter 4. So this is Chapter 4, our fourth ELTOC of this year. But you've got 48 hours to do it. And as you can see, there's a banner going across the bottom, and links will go into the comment box where you can get your certificate. And we'll also put links throughout the day to ensure that you can get the certificate, but please be aware of that time. You've got until Monday the 12th of December at 9 a.m. UTC Universal Time to claim your certificate. What you will need to do is click on the link and then it will take you through to how to get the certificate, and it will be delivered to you after that. Also, remember that ELTOC is a 2-block conference. We're about to start block 1. Let me bring up the schedule for you. So we're about to get underway with Mark and Ed, and then we'll be going through to Jenny and Paul, who will be talking about pronunciation. Then we'll have a small exhibition update from Oxford University Press before finishing block 1 with stories from the teacher with Jamie Keddy. And then we will convene, later in my day, but into Saturday in some time zones. And the second block will be coming up, starting, as you can see on the screen. The first talk of the second block will be at 2 a.m. UTC. And we will go through with 3 more talks in that time zone. And it's not limited, so if you are in the right time zone, or if you fancy staying up late or getting up early, then of course you can join in there with it. There's no sign up, just join in on the social media. We're live on YouTube, LinkedIn and Facebook, and of course share it with your colleagues. I can already see that there are nearly 600 of you already. I'm sure some of your colleagues are missing out, so do tell them, send them an email, a message on Facebook, say come and join us, see what's going to happen over the next few hours. So we all know where we're joining us from. I guess the next question is, this is Chapter 4 of ELTOC. Yeah, okay, so this is the 4th one of these this year. Have any of you been to all 4? I'd love to know. Again, let us know in the chat box and the comment box. How many ELTOCs have you been to? Well, not just this year when you could have been to 4, but I mean we've been doing it for a few years now. So who's got the biggest number in that case? Are you an ELTOC champion? Come and tell us about it. Come and tell us in the chat box. I can see numbers are. This is yes. But just a simple I have. That's great. All of them, Anna. Thank you. If you wonder why I'm still looking down, it's because I can see the chat box on my second computer. It's not that I'm not ignoring you. Your second ELTOC. Oh, Joe, this is your first. Hi, Joe. Welcome to ELTOC. We're a lovely family. We do this 4 times a year. every quarter we come and meet, we have a little chat, we share some information, and we bring together the English language teaching community for it. Welcome to your first one. And so we've got a number of people on the first one. Welcome. If this is your first one and you really enjoy what's coming up and you find it, you've learned so many for it, you can go back into the Oxford University media channels and you'll be able to find ELTOC 1, chapter 1, 2, 3 and then 4. Hi Christina, welcome for your first ELTOC. Nice to have you joining with us. So many people joining for the first one, but we've got a number. Nadia can't remember, it's a third or a fourth. So if you are new, welcome. If you are rejoining, hello and welcome. And we are 4 minutes away from the first talks coming up. And Ed and Mark will be with us here. So my last question to you is, what is the drink of choice at this moment in time? I've got a nice big coffee here because it's still morning for me here in Oxford. But if you want to advise us on what we should be drinking and snacking with as we go through the next few hours, please do drop it into the chat box. And as you do that, I'll remind you of one of the things I've been finding really interesting from Oxford University Press recently, which is Find the Words. I don't know if you've seen the Find the Words video, but that will be coming up at the break. But let me remind you that learning English is not easy. You have to remember unfamiliar words and sentences. You have to speak in front of people, training your mouth to make sounds that feel strange. You have to be ready to get it wrong and accept when someone corrects you, even when you're trying your best. Sometimes there is nowhere to hide, but as we know, as being teachers and seeing it in our learners, we keep trying, and every time a mistake is corrected, we tend to remember, and we won't make that mistake again. Each word that is mispronounced, we'll remember the new pronunciation and remember that for the future. Each conversation that gets lost somewhere in the middle will take the right path when we come across it again. And why? Because when you make yourself understood, when you find the words, the moment is magic. You can take part in the conversation and the next step is yours for you to take. So as I said, Oxford University Press have a video which I absolutely love, and that will come up in the exhibition break on the Find the Words campaign. But we're going to be running that campaign through through today's blocks, and we've asked some of the speakers to share their Find the Words stories with us, and we'll introduce the first one of those in a moment. But as you listen to those stories, consider a significant moment in your life where you find the words. And as we go through today, we would love to be able to share some of those. So if you do have a moment when you have found the words, then post them on your social media platform where you are now, but use the hashtag #FindTheWords, and then we'll be able to see them. Also, to go along with the campaign, there's a series of free teaching and learning resources to help you find the words and help your students find the words and celebrate all those amazing moments. So there are lesson plans for young learners, for teenagers, and they're all completely free and on the Oxford University Press website. So do have a look on there, and I do look forward to seeing some of those magical words that you want to share with us, and I will make sure that if you do share those words, we'll try and get them on screen as we go through. All right, shall we go? Shall we get ready for chapter 4? We're going to launch chapter 4 with Ed Dudley and Mark Richard, and they're going to talk about how to avoid being replaced by a computer. Yeah, doesn't sound good, being replaced by a computer. This discussion that they are about to talk about will focus on how teachers can develop the uniquely human skills that make them irreplaceable, including the ability to make choices about how they use technology. Our speakers you may have met before, but if you haven't, let me tell you about them. Ed Dudley is the professional development manager for Oxford University Press, where he works developing the Oxford Teachers Academy courses. He has extensive experience of training, teaching, and materials materials writing, and he's the co-author of a book called Mixed Ability Teaching. Now, if you've seen me talk and introduce it before, you will know that I always say this, and I genuinely mean it. It's one of my favourite books. So Mixed Ability Teaching, which was published by Oxford University Press in 2016, and I can't recommend it enough. He's also an author of another really good book called the ETpedia for Teenagers, so do check those out. Mark Richard is a Taiwan-based trainer with 20 years of ELT experience in East Asia and Europe. He has taught all age groups from in various schools and agencies, and as OUP's Educational Service Manager, he regularly presents at TESOL conferences, and he's a certified trainer for the Oxford Teachers Academy. And he loves to fill his students' minds with curiosity so they work hard without realizing it and think for themselves. Now, Mark did share with us one of those Find the Words stories, and I'm gonna pretty much read this as it is. So Mark says, "My sparks of language learning delight come from finding myself in situations where I realise that I know what to say. I remember feeling so happy using Mandarin to buy an adult entrance ticket to what my students had called Taiwan's Disney World. I was delighted that I'd said everything perfectly, though I wondered why the lady had kept asking me if I wanted children's tickets. Had she noticed that I was an unaccompanied 6'1" man with a stubbled face? When I walked through the gate, I realised that all of the rides were for toddlers. I went on the little train anyway, just me and 6 tiny kids and a crowd of puzzled parents. As the train circled through the awkward silence, I decided to learn the Mandarin word for children." I think that's a lovely story to get us going, and here to talk about computers and teachers. There you go, there's Mark. I should ask Mark, what's the Mandarin word for children at this point?
孩子,
Thank you.
little children.
And here is Ed. I told you it was a good story. Ed, hi, how you doing?
Fantastic.
So let's get ELTOC on the way. Over to you two. Have a good session.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, Mark.
Hello, Ed, and that was very nice from Sean, taking me back a long time, about 20 years, in fact, to arriving in Taiwan and the unfamiliar language and trying to find the words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So, Ed, this session is called "How to Avoid Being Replaced by a Computer." So maybe we should start by just defining what we mean there, especially by that word computer.
Right. Yeah. So we're using the word computer, I think, just to refer to technology in general. So we're talking about any use of technology in the classroom, whether that's a computer or any other kind of device. And I think we should say, Mark, that we should congratulate ourselves on having done pretty well so far. Not just you and me, but everyone else who's here today. We have so far successfully avoided being replaced by a computer. But we do want to look a bit more seriously at where this fear might come from and how it's best to talk about it and resolve it.
Yep. And so why don't we kick off by inviting the audience out there to take part in a poll. So before we get into teaching, let's just think about our attitudes towards technology in general, right? And so we have a poll for you, and it's a simple A or B. Let me read this out. Do you prefer to get help from A, a person, or B, a machine? And so when I think about that, it'll take a while for your poll results to come up. I think about the supermarket checkout,
Right.
where you have the option to do the
or,
machine.
Or like buying a train ticket or something like that.
Yes.
That's another example. Yeah.
And I was thinking, this reminded me, talking about being replaced by a computer, right? And this is not to do with teaching English, but it just cropped up this last week. My wife was in a dim sum restaurant a couple of months ago with her brother's family, and they ordered their dishes, and a robot waiter came up to their table, out of the kitchen, up to their table with their order. Now, my 3-year-old nephew saw that there was a big flashing button on the robot which said, "Okay." And so, being a 3-year-old boy, he pressed that button, and the robot waiter turned around, still with all of the food on the tray, and just went back into the kitchen. And that for me is, that restaurant had replaced a human waiter with a robot waiter. But that's where I think a human waiter would have totally understood the situation and knew that the little boy didn't really know what he was doing. And that would have been no problem at all for the human waiter to adjust to something that happened which was unexpected, right? But the robot couldn't. So that's something I think about because I think teaching is very unpredictable. And so there's a lot I'm not confident that computers or technology will replace us just yet. How about you?
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat box and can see that people are voting for both, actually. A lot of votes for A and for B. Deborah there going for A. A lot of people also saying it depends. Nimra is one example of someone who can see the benefits of a human help and tech help, depending on the context. And I guess, Mark, I'm the same. I think it boils down to this. There are some situations where if it's a very simple transaction, for example, buying a train ticket, then I'd really prefer to talk to to get help from a machine. But if it's a complicated situation with various stages or steps, then I would rather talk to a human being. And it reminds me of an article I read just the other day about a man who went into a post office to try and post a letter. And he noticed that there were 2 people working in the post office. There were very long queues, and there were some machines, some self-service machines, but they were all switched off. And when he finally got to the front of the queue and said, why don't you guys just switch on the machines? Or are the machines broken? The post office workers said, well, that's the thing, you see. If we switch on the machines, we constantly have to go over there to help people use the machinery. And so it actually is easier just to switch them off.
Yeah, I mean, that's something's gone wrong there, right? They were looking for efficiency and they got the opposite. But it's interesting. I thought I was seeing a lot of A's, but then there's a lot of more nuanced answers from teachers as well. Marcia Rodriguez says, computers and technology would be a complement and support for our work. That's interesting. And I think we might come back to that comment later when we talk about teaching with technology, a complement and a support. So yeah, good point, Marcia. And let's think about that. And okay, so we're not totally decided. I don't see a pattern. We've got many A's, we've got some both. So we've got just a few B's though, not too many B's that I see. So let's ask another question, which is about this topic. So you've all joined us today. What interests you about this topic? And I think I'd like to ask you that too, Ed.
Yeah.
Actually, can I add another question onto that? Because I see we've got what interests you about this topic. Another question related to that. Are you afraid of being replaced by digital technology as a teacher? So I'd love to see your answers about that. Ed, are you afraid of being replaced by
Well,
computers?
when I think about this question, I guess the answer is yes. The technology is moving so fast, it doesn't take long before you hear breaking news about some new breakthrough in technology. So I think the fear is real, but I would say that perhaps teaching is a bit different from other professions. We know, for example, that if you drive a bus or if you work in a post office, the fear of being replaced by technology is real and is already happening. But I think that what I'd like to do here today is talk to you, Mark, and also hear what people have to say in the chat box about how teachers might be different. I'd like to investigate what it is about being a teacher that is somehow advantageous, what we can do that computers can't do. And I think and I hope that by the end of our conversation, we will have dispelled this fear slightly. So if there are people who are genuinely afraid about being replaced by technology, I think we have plenty of reasons why they don't need to be afraid of that actually happening.
Yeah, well,
is it the same for you? What interests you about this topic?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just reading some of the comments here. So Jane O. Davies, tech as a tool with which to assist sound evidence-based pedagogy. And then Zainab Jehangir or Jehangir Khan, we will be replaced if we are not able to evolve vis-a-vis technology. So I'm not really afraid of all of me as a teacher. A teacher does many things. I'm not afraid that everything I do as a teacher will be replaced by technology. I'm really not. I think that technology is a part of our society. That means it's a part of our students' lives. And I want my teaching to incorporate technology. I want my pedagogy to encompass technology. But I got to tell you, I do have resistance to the hype. It's not the technology itself, but I'm very cautious of avoiding ed tech hype.
Right.
Because for over 100 years now, it seems like every few years, we get some new technology and it's supposed to transform learning. We hear this a lot, transformational, a magic solution, a silver bullet. And I don't think it ever really has worked like that. I'm thinking like in the UK, maybe 20 years ago, they had one laptop per child, as if you can just put a laptop in a school and everything will get better. And there's a researcher, an educational researcher called Mark Warschauer, who I like, and he's researched this a lot. He researches digital learning. And I like this story, and it's 30 years old, but I still think it's relevant for teaching English now. So he often studied language learning with digital technology. And about 30 years ago, he had some friends who were some French language teachers at Stanford University. And they told him that a new technology had come along into their lessons, which was transforming the way they were teaching and the way the students were learning. It was a game changer, right? A game changer. And what it was multimedia presentation before PowerPoint. So this is like, wow, amazing. Students can produce a multimedia presentation. So Mark Warschauer went into a freshman first semester French language class, and he observed the students making a multimedia presentation in French. What he saw was that most of the time, the students were figuring out how to use the software and talking to each other in English. And they spent hours doing that to create a multimedia presentation with 2 sentences of French. And Mark Warschauer says this is often the case, that the technology becomes more of a focus than the actual language learning. So, yeah, the tech transformed those lessons by making them worse, you could argue, right? So it's not always a positive transformation. So I think we've got to be careful in not just assuming technology is a magic solution, but looking for opportunities to use technology, but focusing on the language learning, not distracting from it.
Yeah, it really reinforces, doesn't it, the importance of smart decision making in all aspects of teaching, including how and when we use technology. And I think that's something that we're going to be coming up to. Mark, I think it's worth addressing the inevitable fact that, computers can do certain things rather well. And perhaps we ought to talk a little bit about the things that we think that computers can actually do better than a teacher. Do you think that's a fair assumption to make? Is that something we could talk about?
I think that's totally fair. Well, I'm not sure yet. Maybe you can convince me. But give me an example of something that computers can do.
I'd love to hear, our attendees' examples as well. So the question is, what can a computer do better than a teacher? And one example I would have is a computer can remind us to do things that we promise that we do. And there's this idea of spaced repetition, to have repeated exposure or testing of something which you're trying to learn, for example, vocabulary. And teachers can provide regular checkups in class, but there's nothing quite like a flashcard program or a self-access quiz that a student can do on a device to check their progress at regular intervals and get that instant feedback from the technology, which will help them see how they're progressing on their learning path. And that, I think, is something which a human teacher can do, but the technology doesn't get tired. It's always available, and it can perform the task really well without ever forgetting.
I can see that. It's like the teachers and the student's brain is freed up from remembering when it's time to review the vocabulary and just focus on the actual language work. There's another way in which I quite like, that I can imagine a computer helping me, maybe not replacing me, and it's a virtual assistant. And I deliver webinars, sometimes in the role of a teacher, and students are in a webinar. And actually, Sean mentioned it before we came on. Very often in a teacher training session, or if I'm a teacher, my students will ask questions which are not really about learning. They're admin kind of questions. For example, will we get a certificate? Will there be a recording of the session? I mean, that's for webinars, not this. This is a kind of live session, which it's an evergreen session, which is sort of always there on YouTube or Facebook or wherever. But, will there be a recording? And so I don't want to waste educational time answering, yes, you will. Oh, the recording will arrive. You'll be sent it in, 3 working days, whatever. So I would love a virtual assistant. And there is a relatively simple one, which is a chat box bot, which can be programmed quite simply to detect those questions, like certificates. That word will trigger it. It will patrol the chat box. And assignment deadline. Oh, when do I hand in my assignment?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Mhm.
Recording, video recording. And so imagine if the chat box can answer those questions for me, and then I can answer these student questions, which are actually focused on the educational topic. So a virtual assistant, yeah, it's interesting actually, because it's not replacing me as a teacher, but it's replacing one of my teacher functions.
Yeah.
And maybe that's how I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I don't mind. One of my teacher functions is doing that kind of admin.
Mm.
But if a chatbot can take over that teacher function, I can focus on the other, I don't know, more human or critical thinking or teaching functions.
I like the way you phrased that, Mark, earlier. I like the way you said it's not so much a question of being replaced by a computer as being helped by a computer. And that is really borne out by what people are saying in the comments. And people have been talking in the comments about the availability of technology, the fact that it can just do the tasks that the teacher doesn't really need to focus on, and allowing the teacher to do the more valuable tasks of assisting learning to develop.
There are definitely, when I'm now thinking of other things I do as a teacher, which to be honest aren't fun and maybe aren't that useful. You know, like marking, when you have to mark work that students have written. It could be, say, a grammar activity.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, many teachers have a big stack of red pens in a mug. And just marking, getting students workbooks, and then that evening or the next day, I kind of mark them correct, wrong, maybe write some feedback. And it might take a few days or even a week for me to give that feedback to the students. Because my hope as a teacher is that the students will open, read all my feedback, go, aha, and I see like a light come on in their heads. But it doesn't happen, to be honest. They don't read my feedback. And that's where, you know, in online practice, you would get automated feedback. Where, to be honest, it's not that valuable for a teacher to, you know, wrong, right. There are a couple of issues there. One is that as a teacher, another role of a teacher is to judge the students. And I quite like if I don't do the marking, but a computer does. I'm not judging you. I can be the one to look at the, you know, what the computer said, right, wrong, and now I can help you. So actually, the computer doing the automatic marking can reduce my judging role, right, and then help me to support the student, which is a more positive relationship with the human, I think.
I couldn't
with the human student.
I could not agree with you more. I spent many years teaching teenagers in a high school setting in Hungary, and one thing I can say for sure is that students do not like being given a corrected page back from the teacher, but when they get automated feedback from technology, that the element of judgment is taken out of the equation, and they are intrigued and curious to try and improve their score rather than resentful of a perceived judgment from the teacher. So I think that is vital, what you just said.
There is some, Carlos, I'm just scrolling up the comments before they disappear forever. Well, they won't, they're always there. Carlos Kuli or Thuli Pariachi or Pariaki, I'm sorry, I'm not sure which language that is or how to pronounce it. Thank you. Giving feedback or immediately, that's the key word, immediately, to achieve goals. Checking learning allows great interaction naturally. So Carlos, I mean, it's the word immediately there that's probably key. And because when my example, I give the students back those workbooks, so much time has passed since they did the exercise that actually the students have forgotten what they did. And then they don't really care anymore. But that's the important thing. You have a go at working out comprehension questions or a grammar puzzle, and then immediately you see how well you did, and you think, oh, I got that one wrong. Your brain is still hot and curious because you've just been working on it. And so that's the moment, strike while the iron is hot, we say. So you get the feedback at that point where you're making the effort, and then you want to have another go until you get it right. So actually, I think the most important thing, thank you, Carlos, there, is the immediacy of automated computer feedback.
Okay,
Well,
I have a
that's
question.
things.
I have a
Okay, go
question
ahead.
for everyone here, connected to what you said, Mark. So let's imagine my student has been through the automated feedback process, has finally reached a stage where they have mastered all of the vocabulary for the semester or the unit. They are feeling absolutely delighted. What do your students want to do when they have finally climbed to the mountaintop? What do you want to do? I mean, for me, what I think a student wants to do is to go and tell people about it. They want to show their achievements to someone, whether it's a classmate or a parent or a teacher. And very often people will post something on social media and say, "Oh, I'm so proud to have done this." What's happening there? Really, what we're doing is we're reaching out to other people to get that warm buzz that comes from having a social connection with someone. And I'm just imagining a situation now where a language student has nothing but that technology to help them teach, to help them learn. And I feel there would be something missing. In other words, teacher can't disappear for 6 months and say, "Guys, you have the technology, keep on learning, keep on practicing." Because I think critically, after a short period of time, something begins to feel like it's missing. And there's a diminishing return on the experience that requires something else to be added to the learning situation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like I've done some self-learning courses, and good, a good example of that is MOOCs. What are they called?
Right.
Massive open online courses,
Hmm.
which were supposed about 2011, 2012. Universities brought out MOOCs, so
Yeah.
thousands of people do the same course. No teachers for most of them, and it's all self-paced. And actually, they kind of bombed. They were supposed to be like
Yeah.
the end of universities and teachers as we know it, but it didn't happen precisely because, according to the research, students didn't. Well, actually, there's this assumption that just providing access to content is all you need for people to learn. But actually, what even people who are good at self-learning, they had a teacher to begin with to teach them how to do that
Right.
self-learning.
Yeah.
And yeah, the teachers there. So the teacher can just detect how the students are feeling,
Yeah.
um, see if they're getting bored with something, and then switch it up a bit. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I think that there's something missing in a course when there's not a teacher.
Yeah.
That's what I feel. What are
Mm.
people saying in the chat box?
I've noticed a great comment from Monica Fernandez, in addition to the one from Giancarlo here. So Giancarlo says, "What's missing is the relationship with a human being." Yes, and it's always a matter of relationships. And Monica says more or less the same thing. It is about those relationships. And perhaps we'll be there in the future. I'm sure there will be some proponents of artificial intelligence who will say that, we might well have AI that can give you the kind of relationship that is fulfilling. But right now, we don't have that. Successful learning does require the building of a relationship between a learner and a teacher in some substantial way.
Right.
I'm convinced of that.
Heba said, I mentioned MOOCs. She says MOOCs have teachers, though lesson sessions are often recorded. Yeah, now some MOOCs do, but most of them, the teacher's not, there's no feeling of a teacher being present,
Mm.
right? So there are some MOOCs which have a teacher, but teachers designing the content and then putting it out there for people to work through at the same pace, it relies greatly on people having self-study skills, which
Mm.
is quite a big assumption, which is interesting. The research on MOOCs shows that most of the people who attended MOOCs had actually already attended really good elite universities in the
Yeah.
US. So they actually already had been taught by people, by real teachers, the skills they needed for self-study. So that was what went wrong with the MOOCs. It was
Mm.
generally a kind of lack of the feeling of teacher presence. And I'd add to that the feeling of someone caring for you.
Yeah.
That's another teacher function.
Yeah.
I think students really, a lot of teaching is not just delivering information, it's showing that you care for
Mm.
students.
Mm.
We call it, I teach online courses. There's a lot of what we call pastoral work,
Yeah.
where students get sick or they have a difficulty, and you have to listen and say, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," and offer them advice and support. So, and recently in educational research, there's been a lot of work on caring and how
Yeah.
teachers show they care even through a digital environment.
Mm.
So that's another thing teachers do, which we actually forget that we do. We
Yeah.
show that we care for our students and they appreciate that.
Mm.
And maybe computers don't do that in the same way.
Yeah. I guess what we're talking about now, Mark, is what teachers can do better than a computer. And I think that's something that it will be interesting to see our audience's opinions on. For me, it connects very strongly to what you've said about caring. It's essentially, it's being a human being. It's what teachers can do better than a computer. It's for example, being able to notice something. You gave the wonderful example at the start of the robot waiter who didn't notice that people were looking shocked. A good teacher, they say, has eyes in the back of their head and also can read the room in a certain way. It's those noticing and interpretation skills and having the ability to respond accordingly that give teachers the edge. It's also to do, I would say, with having a whole bunch of non-cognitive skills. So being able to model things like patience and determination and being able to help our students to develop them as well.
Yes, I mean, a good point. Yeah, I mean, it's a human is much more likely to respond, I think, to a human role model, demonstrating those kind of social skills. And I don't know a computer can really do that to the same extent. There is, when you ask this question, and Puya or Puja Sipi says teachers can give better emotional support to the kids. Yeah. And they can notice, they can interpret people's feelings, they can provide that caring, that pastoral support. The question is, a teacher can also be funny, right? But the question is that, what can a teacher do better than a computer? There's a very famous quote from a science fiction writer and futurist, Arthur C. Clarke. So if you've seen the movie Space 2001 with the computer HAL, he wrote the original story for that and many others. And his very well-known quote is this: if a teacher can be replaced by a machine, they should be. And that's interesting. And I'm sure there are many different angles to consider that. But the context was he was talking about delivering information through videos and things like that. Now, here's an important thing. Our question, and I'm just looking at it, how to avoid being replaced by a computer. Understand that as a teacher, you have many different dimensions and functions. Now, if your idea of teaching is simply to deliver information, instructing, informing, and you stand in front of a class and you just deliver information for 45 minutes, then that's very one-dimensional, right? And in that case, maybe you can be replaced by a computer, or that reads out Wikipedia or something to the students. So, I think this question actually makes me think about what is it that teachers really do? What is teaching? Because it's got to be more than delivery of information. And it is. We've talked about caring. So that's something to think about, right?
You know what? I'd say this as well. I would say that you will come across people out there who will say, oh, yes, teachers should be replaced by computers. What all those people will have in common is zero understanding of teaching. And anybody who's been in the classroom as a teacher will understand the ways that technology can help us, but will also understand that what you've just said about what teaching actually involves proves that big if a teacher can be replaced is something which is basically defining a poor teacher. Good teachers bring to the classroom all of those aspects of humanity which help them to see what's happening, empathize with learners, and help them figure out how to progress. And it's that idea of being a role model, isn't it? We stand there in front of the students, or we sit there on the call, and we are role modeling what is involved in language learning, and we're making mistakes as part of that. And students can see how we, the teachers, make mistakes ourselves, how we respond to the mistakes that they make, and how we help them find solutions. I don't think that a student can be inspired by technology in the same way that they can be inspired by a teacher as a role model for learning.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think I see some comments in the chat. Empathy, relation, laughing. Teachers can identify the learning abilities of an individual. Some people say that AI can do that, but I'm not convinced. Where some of you mentioned reading the room. Ioanni17 says teachers can be empathetic, encourage learners when they aren't confident, and create a bond with them. Can computers sense confidence? So yeah, what's coming out here is that if we want to avoid being replaced by computers, we have to emphasize that our social skills, our emotional skills, the human processes of educating, rather than just informing and instructing. And but again, that doesn't mean that we have to reject computers. I don't think it's not the human against the computer. It's recognizing, and maybe we've been doing this to some extent, recognizing what computers can do better than us, which help us, and recognizing those teacher functions which we're really good at and
Yeah.
computers aren't. And there's a quote here, because something which kind of annoys me is very generic statements like humans are better at teaching than computers, because actually or technology makes learning better, because those general statements for me avoid what's important. They completely miss the point, which is understanding the different, not that a teacher is this, but that a teacher is many things, and in which of those things, well, the human aspects, and which, like delivery of information, admin, can be replaced by computers. And there's is it Chris Deedy? He's a professor of learning technologies at Harvard University, and he said that, yeah, it's ridiculous to say that technology improves learning. It's such a generic statement. And he's got a nice metaphor. He says, computers aren't like a fire that generates warmth. So you just sit around. If you're a student, you just sit around a computer and you learn in the same way that you can sit around a fire and get warm, right? It doesn't work like that. Computers are not like a fire. Computers, he said, are like clothes. They have to fit right. They have to be the right material. They have to be appropriate for what you want to do with them educationally. Okay, so let's kind of break this down. It's not humans and computers. It's the functions of what's required in teaching and learning. And I've always liked that metaphor.
Okay, so I think we've established a kind of consensus here that there are incredibly valuable things that teachers bring to education, and that we're not in any danger of being replaced, assuming the decision makers know a thing or two about education. If there are these skills then that we've identified, is it worth talking about how we can develop them further? Is that a good place to go to now in our conversation? Sure. Okay. So I guess the question is, how can these skills be developed? What can we start doing tomorrow? I don't know whether you have anything about this that you want to recommend or suggest, Mark.
What can we do? Okay, well, I've mentioned this. It's about recognizing. I always kind of break it down into looking at what a teacher does in terms of functions, and thinking, okay, so if a teacher, a human, can show care for their students, and I believe that students really appreciate the feeling that the teacher cares for them, then the first step is surely being aware that that's a valuable teacher trait. And if you're aware, just remind yourself to show care, because it's tough. Teachers do so many things while teaching a lesson. There are dozens of things we're thinking about: pacing, who's doing what, the time, materials that we've got. So just writing notes about, just having a sticky note in front of you saying, show that you care, or and that means that sounds,
I like it.
You kind of have to help yourself remember, or maybe this is where you should have an app which helps you to remember to show care to students. And that means like writing down things to say which show that. It's like, how are they looking? What's their mood like? Even, asking students how they're feeling about something. Just making sure that you bring out those human qualities. There's another aspect, maybe. Well, I'll ask you first, but I do have thoughts on our attitudes to computers as well.
Okay, go on. I'd love to hear that.
Well, I mean, I used to be quite anti-tech, actually.
Mhm.
And then I realized I wasn't anti-tech. I was actually anti the hype, because there's a
Right.
vast multi-billion-dollar industry trying to sell teachers ed tech, and there's a lot of hype, and there's a lot of, I don't think, not very valuable
Mm.
tech out there. But
Yeah.
but for me, it's like, seeing how computers can assist me and not feeling threatened by them.
Mm.
Like you've said, there are many things we do better than computers. Uh, and I'd like to use an example from the world of chess, if that's
Oh,
okay.
okay. Hmm.
Now, Tyler Cohen is an economist, and he wrote a lot about, in chess, you get these human grandmasters, and they play matches against computer programs, right?
Hmm.
And who wins? Well,
These days, it's the computers who win, right?
a bit of a trick question, but no, right? It's a human-computer combo that's the best. So a
Okay.
human and computer combination working together will usually win a chess match against a computer playing alone.
Mm.
I find that interesting, right? And I think it says that, I think in the future, the tech's going to be there, and with
Mm.
AI and machine learning generating better AI,
Mm.
it's going to become more and more powerful. So I think in the future, teaching is going to be about accepting what computers do well, and combining our human creativity and insights with that massive processing power of
Yeah.
computers,
Yeah.
right? So it's the combination.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the chess, the grandmaster, and the technology working together. I think it fits education very well. What I would say in response to this question of how we can develop these skills, it would be to carry on what you've said about the hype. It would be when someone says to you, "Oh, you need to forget everything you know about teaching because this new development's going to change everything." Not to believe that. We need to continue doing what we used to do before there was technology. We say that a good teacher has, eyes in the back of their head. Let's also investigate having some eyes in the back of our classroom, which means let's work with our colleagues. Let's talk to each other. Let's invite each other to come and watch our lessons, especially if we're using technology, to get some feedback on what's going well. The discussions that teachers have with each other are an essential part and a vital part of providing quality education. Being able to ask yourself questions and your colleagues questions about what's working well and what isn't working well will help to make sure you've got the right fit, to make sure that you aren't wearing clothes that make you look ridiculous, to use your great analogy. And there's something about trusting our own instincts and practices that I think really needs emphasizing here. Teachers, I think we need to remind ourselves that it's a difficult job and we do it well. And we should trust ourselves to continue doing it well and not be told by people who don't have the same insights and understanding that we do that we should change everything we're doing because of some agenda which involves technology. So finding that balance is so important.
What's important is teachers making sure their managers understand those qualities.
Yeah.
Because very often managers don't, right? Often tech is brought in by managers in educational institutions who maybe don't understand teaching. This relates to a lot of teaching work is called invisible labor. And even we as teachers ourselves, we don't really account for it. When we go home and we're thinking about, how can I teach that better next time? How can I introduce this grammar point so it connects with my students better next time? We do so much what's called invisible labor, and we have to understand what we do, and I think as a group kind of show our managers all of that human teaching work we do, because they don't know it. All right. And well, we're coming to the end now, but if you have ideas of how do you use computers to teach English, please share.
Yeah.
And and while Sean might come in any second, I'm not sure. But Ed, how do you use computers to help
Well,
you teach English?
actually, I want to give some credit here to Sean because I've actually learned a lot from him about using technology. And it's actually very surprisingly, the thing I learned from Sean was not to bother with apps and programs, but to use the built-in functionality of, for example, a cell phone. And so I've done some wonderful things that my students loved, which involved, for example, taking a photograph of taking a photograph to try to recreate a photograph in the course book, and then having a spot the difference activity. So the students recreate the cafe scene with their pencil cases and desks. That kind of thing, I think, is great.
The technology doesn't get in the way, right? It's like the Mark Warschauer thing. The focus is, because they're familiar with the tech, the focus is on the language learning. That you actually remind me of something I do, which is the students make their own flashcards. It's a bit different. You get in a course book, a vocab page, and there's maybe like, 6 to 8 pictures of, let's say it's different kinds of weather, right? And I say to students, oh, look at these pictures. Do you like these pictures? And they go, yeah. I say, well, I think they're okay. Can you choose 3 vocab items, go home, and using your phones, assuming they have phones. By the way, they can just cut out magazines if they don't have phones, pictures from magazines. They find pictures, for example, storm, cloudy, snowy, and they find their 3 favorite pictures, and then they bring them in on their phones. And at the beginning of next class, they show each other, oh, it is stormy. Wow, that's a great picture of a storm. And they share their vocabulary with each other. And because they've gone home and in their own time, maybe asking for help from someone at home, and searched for those images and saved them on their phone, because they've done that, they've personalized it. The picture's their own, therefore the word is their own. They're sharing it with each other. They might say, you know what, your picture of stormy is better than mine. They're going to remember those words, which is the main thing, right? As language teachers. And talking of Sean, you see, if you compliment him, he arrives.
The magic word.
Sean, he arrives. Yeah.
I had to wait until I started to stop blushing after Ed's kind words before I came back on screen. I do have a question for you. It was a really interesting talk. You kind of mentioned chatbots and AI during that, and I wondered if you this week, especially in the UK, there's been a lot of talk about Chat GPT. So if people don't know, Chat GPT is a chatbot which is now anybody can use, and it's got artificial intelligence in it. With it. So during your talk, I did ask it, will computers replace teachers?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it said, it gave me a long answer, but it said, so it said no, but because they cannot replace the human interaction and support the support that teachers provide. Additionally, computers are not able to adapt to the needs of individual students in the way that a teacher can. Instead, teachers and computers are likely to work together to provide students with the best possible educational experience, which is exactly what you said, isn't it?
Uncanny. Yeah, it's funny, Sean, I just heard about ChatGPT last night from talking to an educational researcher at a university in the UK, actually. I just happened to be talking to him last night. And it's all the rage. Apparently, UK Twitter teachers... Yeah. And I read a little bit about it today, and yes, it's another. I keep saying, like, there's been 100 years of hype around EdTech, but maybe one day there will be something which does transform everything. I'm
the
not
silver
sure.
bullet will be here at some point. As you said, there's 100 years of it. I mean, gentlemen, we could talk for ages. Obviously, tech is what I love to talk about and deal with. But we do have other people waiting in the wings. So thank you so much for a really insightful talk. Loads of things to go back and think about and talk about. And I absolutely agree with a lot of what you said. So thanks, guys. Thanks for opening ELTOC Chapter 4 for us. I will see you again, presumably, because you're not going to get replaced by computers. So take care for now. I'm going to drop you out, and we'll start the transition to other people. Thank you, and you can see there are people in the chat box thanking you and for the effort. Hi everyone, I'm Sean. If you've just joined in, and we are in ELTOC Chapter 4. Hi there, Jihad. How you doing? So we're in ELTOC Chapter 4. We've just had that wonderful opening discussion between Mark and Ed, and we'll be moving on to the next discussion straight away. Before I do hand over, though, just to remind you, if you're looking for that certificate information, there is a certificate, but you've got just under 48 hours to get it. You can see now the ticker on the screen is giving you that information. The key thing here, guys, is to remember that the certificate is only available until 9 a.m. UTC on Monday morning. You might might have worked out. If you look in my, it's that way, isn't it? If you look above me there, you will see a QR code. If you click on that QR code, that doesn't work, does it? If you scan the QR code, then you'll be taken to a page that gives you all the links from today, and one of those is the certificate. And just to remind you that this is block 1 of chapter 4 of ELTOC. We've got 2 more talks for you today. Then we'll take a break, and then later on in the day there will be, or early Saturday morning, depending on your time zone, there will be block 2. So if you've decided after the first talk you want to see them all, do come along. It's on social media, so there's no need to worry about signing up. Do tell your friends. Do pass on the information. And also, I'm still waiting to see some of those words that are magical for you in the Find the Words campaign. So you can see me on screen, but there is a huge team of people here in the room. So we've got Jess, who's looking after the chat box. We've got Steve that puts the things on the screen. We've got Rodrani. We've got Alex. There's so many people here. And one of the other people in the room is my co-host. So I'm going to hand over to her now. So Katie, do you want to take over from me? Hi there. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you, Sean. How are you?
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to sitting back and just listening rather than having to do the techie side of things. So over to you, Katie.
Thank you. So I have the pleasure of introducing our next set of speakers. I'm sure you'll probably know them already, but we have Paul Woodfall and Jenny Dance for their session on integrating pronunciation teaching and learning into the classroom. So Paul is Oxford University Press's Regional Training Coordinator for Central Asia and the Middle East. He's given training workshops from K1 to 12 and university, and trained many teachers across the globe. He's specifically interested in learning by doing, and his main goal is to promote a greater understanding of student-centered, inquiry-based learning approaches, with the overall aim of encouraging critical thinking and the development of good study skills at all levels during the educational process. And as Sean introduced earlier, we have another Find the Word story from Paul, and it goes as follows. So Paul said, I was teaching an experienced doctor in one of my exam preparation classes. He wanted to carry out research in Europe and had not been able to attain the required IELTS band score after several previous attempts. The huge smile on his face and his heartfelt thanks for his hard work when he gave me the good news was truly uplifting, and Paul said he'll never forget that moment. And today he's joined by Jenny. Jenny is an English teacher and exam trainer with more than 20 years ELT experience. She has a passion for pronunciation and teaching and learning, and is the founder of Phona. They're the publishers of the award-winning Say It English pronunciation app. You might have seen Jenny quite regularly on our Learning English with Oxford social media channels. She believes using technology to support language learning can be both effective and fun for learners and teachers. Jenny also shared a Find the Words moment with us that she had in a supermarket, so I'm going to read that out too. Jenny said, I was in a supermarket in Portugal where I was living at the time. I went to the fish counter and asked for the congelado. I hope I've pronounced that right. Thinking it was a type of fish. I couldn't understand why the lady behind the counter kept saying, yes, but which one? Luckily, she was patient, and eventually I got there, and we both thought it was very funny. She was kind and appreciated that I was trying my best to speak to her in Portuguese. I think you'll agree that those were both such lovely Find the Word stories. I'm just going to pop Jenny and Paul, our wonderful speakers, onto the stream. Hello, Paul. Hello, Jenny.
Hello. Hi, Katie.
Hi, everybody.
I'm going to hand straight over to you, but we'll be behind the scenes if you need us, and I will see everyone later. But I hope you enjoy our next session. Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Thanks, Katie. Hello, everybody.
Katie. Hi. Hello, everybody. What a busy room it looks like we've got here, Paul.
It is indeed. We've got people from Portugal. I think you've got a question, Jenny, haven't you?
I have got a question. Actually, you're right. Thank you for reminding me. So we can see it's a busy room,
It
and
is, yeah,
everybody
very
looks
busy.
like they know what they're doing with ELTOC, but we would love to hear from you guys watching now. Are you joining ELTOC for the first time today, or have you been to one of the ELTOC sessions before? Let us
Right.
know in the chat whilst we're going through some of our initial opening thoughts and comments. We'd love to know if it's your first time at ELTOC or if you've been to ELTOC before.
And
Okay.
I am absolutely amazed at the amount of people from different parts of the world,
Yeah.
Spain, Vietnam, Paraguay, my goodness me,
Yeah.
North Macedonia,
Wow.
Skopje. There's a lot.
Personal.
There's a lot.
Oh, wow, look at this, Paul. People are telling us, sorry to interrupt, they're telling us that they've been to ELTOC not just once before, but the 4th times. For some
And
people,
there's
it's the first, other
there's
people.
also a few who are first timers,
Great.
but you're right. Yeah, we've got a good mix here.
Yeah.
So why are we here? Why are we here indeed? We're here to talk about something. Jenny,
So
why are we
we're
here?
here to
Remind
talk,
me.
well, Paul, we're here to talk about pronunciation, integrating pronunciation, teaching and learning into the classroom. It's a
That's
big
correct.
passion for me, as Katie mentioned in the introduction. And I didn't know which of the stories, the Find the Word stories that she was going to choose, but it's interesting that she chose the one about my Portuguese, kind of understanding pronunciation. I went to the fish counter and asked for the congelado, and I was like, I just want the congelado. And the lady was, well, which one? But, you know, the important thing as far as being an English teacher goes, from my perspective, is helping people learn to communicate more effectively. So that means often helping them improve their pronunciation, giving them confidence in speaking and listening, so that they can go out there and really use English effectively. So in terms of today's session, we want to talk about how you integrate that pronunciation, teaching and into the classroom. I'm glad you like the guitars as well. Thank you.
and just to begin with, we want to find out where you are. We know where you're from, but who do you teach? Let's just pop up the poll now. Who do you teach and why? Now, why we understand it's you know, your profession, but what we mean by why is, what is the context? If you're teaching adults, are you teaching exam preparation classes? Are you teaching general English? If you're in a primary situation, are you teaching English as a foreign language or as a second language? So we want to know a little bit in the comments, please. Okay. If you're teaching primary, Neringa has just put in an A, and we've got B, we've got secondary, we've got a real mix of people. We've got a lot of D's saying they teach a mixture, a whole range.
Okay.
Exam preparation, oh my goodness, we have everything. English as a second language. Okay, so that's very important to think about our examples, so that we do give examples across the spectrum, Jenny.
Yeah, definitely. And I can see that there is a really broad range of classroom situations and scenarios here that people are dealing with. So as Paul and I go through our session, we'll bear that in mind, and we will give you examples that we, you know, maybe reference them a little bit and make sure there's a spectrum for people teaching in all different situations. Thank you for answering that question for us. That's good to see.
And the answers are still flashing in. It's amazing. It's amazing. I don't know how many people we've got, but a lot of people. Okay. So let's go to the first question, which we're going to flash up as a banner.
There's a little, can we have our little scrolly banner?
A little ticker tape. Why is it important to integrate? Now, we believe, don't we, Jenny, that it is important to integrate pronunciation into the classroom, and we can give some ideas. And while we're thinking about this question, what immediate kind of reaction will we get from the audience? I know some of them are still putting in their answers, who they're teaching and why.
Start to think about this question. Paul and I are going to give you, kind of get the ball rolling with some answers, but we'd love to hear from you next. Why do you think it's important to integrate pronunciation, teaching and learning into the classroom?
Okay. And when we say integrate, perhaps it's worth mentioning here that pronunciation is not a 5-minute thing we do that is
Definitely.
not related to a reading text or a listening or a writing activity. Pronunciation should be part of the activity. That's what we mean by integration. Now, Juicy Dazzy says, I think it is essential, but Juicy, why? Let's hear a reason.
Go deeper.
Let's go a bit deeper, because it needs to begin with a need for understanding. The chat is just going too fast for me to read.
Paul, why don't you had some really interesting thoughts on this. If you and I can have a quick look at the chat in the meantime and see what we can pick out. But
and of course, students can be understood. Well, I mean, my first reaction to, I've always been very, very oriented towards pronunciation. But as soon as I started teaching, and the reason was I had myself a very good teacher who said to me, you know, like 85% of what we do and say, or rather of our communication, is verbal. And he made me think about my attitude to teaching language, because when he said that, he said grammar is 85% speech. And I disagree. I thought, what? No, grammar's written. No. But actually, he was right. We spend 85% of our time communicating through speech, and the grammar is actually spoken. So it's not just pronunciation of words, but it's a lot of other things as well. Basically, communication is governed by rules, and phonology is a core feature of those rules. Pronunciation is the way in which sounds are spoken, so we must adhere to rules to be understood in our L1 or in L2 or L3 or L4. It doesn't matter how many languages we speak. We need to recognize and appreciate those rules. Therefore, the teaching of phonology is central to learning a language. That's what I would say. And a lot of comments have been popping in to talk about
really interesting comments. I mean, it's clear. I think we all, as teachers, and you know, people obviously understand how important this is. It's more than a question of how you can integrate it effectively. That's not always easy, but just in terms of why it's important from my perspective, I think it's useful to remember that someone's mentioned in at least one of the comments international English, so international intelligibility. And, you know, with more than 75% of English users around the world being non-native speakers, we need to be able to prepare our students for effective communication with whoever they're speaking to in English. And, you know, regardless of what the L1s are involved on each side of that equation.
And
but
then also, they don't need to be following an American accent or a British accent or an Australian, a Canadian. International English now appreciates diversity, but of course, you know, there are certain, when we talk about rules, there are certain features which are important. And there
are. But I'd just like to, before we move on to what those features are, I just want to say as well that there's plenty of research that shows that actually around 2/3 of miscommunication is down to pronunciation issues. So we're talking about an element, and I can see in the comments here that people really understand this. We're talking about an element that it is crucial to making sure that our learners can communicate and use English effectively. It's not something that, you know, perhaps a course book might not always highlight the pronunciation, you know, and make it easier for teachers to integrate into the classroom, but it is something that an element of learning that you cannot ignore. There's also interesting research around improving pronunciation skills and how that impacts on, for example, reading fluency. So it's not even just about speaking and listening. Reading and writing are influenced and, you know, can be improved and developed through learning, sort of awareness of pronunciation and learning pronunciation skills. So absolutely, you know, bringing this, integrating this, as Paul said, into the activities is really what we're talking about.
Talking of integrating, we do have lots of things to give away. And one of these is, I wrote some time ago, about a year ago, I wrote a professional development module. I think, Jenny, you've seen some of it.
I have. It's excellent.
and the professional development module, we're just going to reiterate what Sean said. If you have a mobile phone, then you can use the Scan Me feature at the top right-hand corner if you're watching this discussion on a desktop. You can then scan that QR code, and you'll have access to all the handouts.
Yes.
The handout I'm referring to at the moment is not a handout, it's a URL. And that URL, it might just be popping into the comments box as well. The URL is the link to my professional development module, which gives you some tips and talks about the origins of the lingua English as a lingua franca, talks a bit about the history, and gives some examples of teaching how to integrate, because we don't have much time during this conversation to look in depth.
Talking of links, Paul, we should also, I think, just scroll back to the point that you were about to start talking about, I think, which is for international intelligibility. There are these kind of 6 core elements of pronunciation teaching, which are kind of your real. They're not the only things to teach, but they're worth focusing on in the first case, these core elements. And they are covered in a position paper. But because we're going to refer to a couple of these in relation to the activities we've got, I just wanted to remind people, or make sure people are aware at a high level what these 6 elements are. So when you're thinking about international intelligibility, and these are the kind of areas that you want to be integrating into your teaching, you need to make sure that you focus on most of the consonant sounds. They're really important for intelligibility.
Indeed.
You need to be thinking about aspiration at the start of words. So I think this might be a good time. We do have a couple of little props for this. So aspiration at the start of words. For example, the word for this piece of fruit here, a pear, which has an aspirated p. But there's a minimal pair that goes with pear, and that is hi.
He's just popped in to say hello.
Bear. So
this is Freddie the bear.
Sorry, guys, we couldn't resist a couple of props. Props are great, actually, for any teaching, but they work really well for pronunciation, I think.
I love my bear, because bear only speaks English. Do you know that, Jenny?
So my pear doesn't say anything, Paul. Tell me about your bear.
Well, in primary teaching, kids love the fact that they can communicate secretly with bear in English. So I'm based in Dubai, and I've been in classes where bear has been with a teacher who's an Arabic speaker, and the kids speak Arabic, so they can speak to the teacher in Arabic, and I give them bear and say, hey, bear doesn't understand Arabic. So the teacher takes bear and they begin talking to bear in English, and that's really good. It's a wonderful way to help them practice their pronunciation.
I love that. So, and if you are not working with young learners, or you're working with people who for whatever reason wouldn't love to see the bear, I can't imagine who wouldn't, but you want to make this point about initial aspiration, one of the things that I focus on in the teaching work that I do, in the presenting work, is thinking about the physical aspects of pronunciation. And a great way to demonstrate this initial aspiration is, I have a little piece of tissue paper here, and I'm going to show you what you can do with this. You may have seen this in a previous ELTOC. If you have, bear with me a moment. So initial aspiration, where the air is coming out of your mouth as you say that first sound in the word. So we have, if we say the word bear, we don't have any aspiration. The paper doesn't move. But when we say the word pear, the paper flies away. And try this, and try it with your students. You can do this with kids. You can do it with adults. You can do it with business people. It's quick and easy to do, and it's a really great way to show those physical elements of pronunciation. I'm really glad you like that idea. I hope people will be trying this in their classrooms next week, because it's so easy.
Could I just answer a comment that's popped in from Marcia Rodriguez? She says there are 18 entries in the Scan Me and 2 about pronunciation, yet connected to Jenny and not Paul. Don't worry, I'm in there. Don't worry, Don't worry, Marcia.
Definitely in there.
I'm definitely in there. My handouts are there, so don't worry. I'm glad you've used your mobile and that you can scan, and you've got 18 URLs or downloadables from for the session.
Yes,
So
and I'm glad.
Thank you for the comment, Marcia.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad people like this idea. So pair and bear are a good set to use this with. Don't forget as well, we have things like coat and goat, same thing. So that is that. This is the second point for your core international intelligibility focus of pronunciation teaching and things you can integrate. The third one, I'm going to run through these really quickly now, but the third one is consonant clusters. So I like to use this example, which is this film you may know. So with consonant clusters, particularly if they're at the beginning or in the middle of a word, you really need to make sure you're saying all the sounds. At the end of the word, you can get away with taking one out. So you can have this boop, singing in the rain. We don't have the final G. That's fine. We can understand that. But if you take out the G in the middle, you have something completely different.
Oh, sounds interesting.
I know, it does, doesn't it? It's like,
Sing in the rain.
It's a whole different film. So
yeah, very different
just
film.
one example for the way that you can show how important consonant clusters are for international intelligibility when they're at the beginning or in the middle of a word. And there are lots of other examples you can find. But then vowel length. Vowel length, super important and hard for students sometimes to hear.
We've just had a comment about vowel lengths. Nella Jacob, I think it is, or Lacob. Nella Lacob. Short I versus the long E.
Yeah, really can be a problem. Yeah.
They can also be a problem. Vowel length.
And I think that with the physical sort of looking at mouth shape and feeling how the jaw can drop with different moving from one vowel to another, that's a really good way to do that. But vowel length, very important. Sentence stress, really important, making sure that your students understand how to emphasize the key words in a sentence and how maybe to kind of reduce the sound and the volume and compress the shorten down some of the less impactful words in a sentence. And my favorite one, finally, word stress. This is really, I get very excited about showing students word stress because it's something that, again, it can be really difficult for learners to hear, but actually what I like to do is make it visual and show them. And then the penny drops. Okay, now I can see what you're talking about. Because if you can make pronunciation visual.
Can you give an example?
An example of
make it visual.
Well, when we come onto the slides, you'll see the app that I built, actually, the Say It English pronunciation app, is all about that. It basically takes sound and turns it into an interactive waveform, but also breaks down the word into syllable chunks and includes tappable IPA.
Right, but if you're a teacher in a classroom without access to technology...
If you're a teacher in a classroom... So another way to make pronunciation visuals, I would say making it physical and visual. You can use claps. You can also use little symbols on the board. So quite often, for example, if you've got a word like pronunciation and you want to really highlight that the primary stress on that penultimate syllable, you can do the. Have you guys seen where you can draw little O's on the board and then a big O for where the stressed syllable is? So the brain finds it easier to process visual information and to process it more quickly. And the brain actually finds it quite difficult to process oral information, which is what we're asking our students to do a lot of the time with pronunciation, right? Making it visual, making it physical, using the piece of tissue paper, saying to people, for example, put your finger here and your thumb here. So when you say the difference between, what was the word we had example? We had it and, or hit hot. That's a good example. Yeah. So you can feel hot. You can feel your jaw drop when you move from hit to hot.
Yeah, there are many noticing activities that we can mention. But just before we do, let's look at some of the biggest challenges that some of the teachers may face. Because I know that many teachers, especially primary teachers, are a little bit unsure of their own pronunciation, and they feel that they're not they're not good enough. They're always a little bit, they use the tape or the audio as much as possible and don't speak too much with the kids. I mentioned the bear earlier on. Bear's a really good technique to use because it gives you the children a way of not looking at you, taking you out of the equation and looking at bear. But for anyone who feels that they may want to improve their own pronunciation, what could we recommend?
Well, I am also interested to know in the comments if people are what kind of tools you are using. So whilst we're talking about the kind of things we could recommend, are you using any particular apps or any books that work really well for you? Any other online material? I can see a few people mentioning things, which is interesting. Keep those coming because that's
BBC English,
BBC
Learning English,
color
Tim's
charts.
pronunciation workshop.
Yeah, it's good to share some of these things as well, right? Because sometimes teachers will say to me, I have to sort of pull all these resources together because they're not necessarily integrated nicely into our course books, which is one of the key challenges.
Yeah, we've got Duolingo there. Well, one of the links that I would recommend is a link to the Speech Accent Archive, which again, if you scan me, you'll see the link there, the Speech Accent Archive. It's over 20 years of research. You can be a part of that research as well at George Mason University in Richmond, Virginia.
It's a great resource.
And in a nutshell, what the archive does is allows you to listen to a variety of people with a variety of language backgrounds, non-native speakers as well as native speakers. They all read the same English paragraph. They are recorded, and the archive is basically constructed as a tool for research and for teaching. So you can contribute to the archive as well. It's there in Scan Me. Do have a look at it. If you're a Russian speaker living in Kazakhstan, you may well be interested to hear other Russian speakers being analyzed in terms of reading this paragraph in English. So that's the Speech Accent Archive. And as I say, you can contribute to it as well. Going on to other challenges, I think a couple of people have mentioned in the comments time to include prawn in the syllabus, which is something we're very aware of, because syllabuses don't often think of pronunciation. So
and I
that's
think we
something
want
to think about at the beginning of a school year.
And
or
maybe to have a set of sort of little pronunciation, either demonstrations or activities, but things that can be integrated in quickly. So because bite-sized learning and integrating, making that pronunciation element part of the teaching is a really effective way to both boost the teaching of let's say it's a grammar point and you want to demonstrate some of the sound or intonation, the stress pattern. Something like question tags is a good example. So when you're teaching question tags, you might want to really point out to your student how the voice might go up or might go down at the end, depending on what the speaker's trying to say. You might want to take a phrase from a course book and start to highlight where the emphasis is in the sentence or in the phrase, so that you're helping them think about the language they're learning from a completely different perspective, one that they don't usually, it's not necessarily the focus of the course book, but you can bring that in quite easily. I think Paul's point about confidence and using the language archive to listen to different non-native speakers of English is really good. But I also we've talked about English for international intelligibility. We're not talking necessarily about aiming for a particular accent in English. And you guys, the non-native speaking teachers who are interacting with us now and who are working with students, you have an enormous advantage in some ways in terms of understanding how difficult it is to make certain sounds in English, but also what the tricks are, what the tips are to get those sounds right. So use yourself as a role model and a resource to show your students how these sounds are acquired. That is, it's worth thinking about. It's both a challenge, but it's also quite a big opportunity to really relate to what your students are trying to achieve.
Sabuhu makes a very interesting comment here. Sabuhi. Yes, here he is. Sabuhi, or she, always says, what to do if I correct a student, but that student listens to their parents who speak wrongly and don't learn? And again, this is a question of communicating to parents as well, which is why something like the Speech Accent Archive is quite useful. Because if we are open about, about learning to improve for international intelligibility, and you're finding that some of your parents are sabotaging your good work, then do let them know. Do let them know what a good speaker of English sounds like.
And maybe thinking as well about pointing out something like the International Phonetic Alphabet, the IPA, which is a great guide to the sounds we're looking at. So I always say to my students with many words in English, you've got to say the sounds, not the spelling. And obviously with English, you have this massive interference of spelling. And we talked a little bit earlier about how the visual input to the brain is dominant. So if you see a word like through written down, your visual brain input is going to be saying, oh, well, I'm expecting all sorts of sounds and complicated tongue movements. And actually, that word only has 3 sounds. Ooh. And when you show people that by use, I think initially perhaps of the International Phonetic Alphabet, ideally an interactive version, one that you can tap to hear the sounds, so that you're not trying to say this abstract symbol means this sound, but use tools that bring that IPA into an interactive audiovisual type setting, and then you're going to be able to give people insight into sound and pronunciation that they might not have had before. It is difficult always as teachers if a parent is maybe challenging saying something different than what you're trying to teach your learners. But I think the IPA is a really useful reference point, isn't it, for thinking about sounds, not spelling.
And as well, online dictionaries like the Oxford Online Learners Dictionary is very helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you can hear. Very good. We're soon going to be running out of time. We've mentioned a few things to help learners with integration, and I would just like to add that, Jenny, you mentioned earlier on stress marking. I would actually stress mark all new board vocabulary. Doesn't matter whether I'm teaching children or if I'm teaching adults. As well as things like spotting the weak sound, the vowel which isn't lengthened. Whole body response to new words, clapping, rhythm, and movement. When especially children, when you're learning a language, movement is so important. If they're sitting down, they're for too long a period, they turn off.
No, definitely. Adults too, by the way. I mean, you don't have to get them up and jumping around, but you can if you think they're up for it. A competition, for example, where they have to come to a board or go across the room to a piece of paper to mark the stress points, that kind of thing. I think, that's a great way to just shake up the energy in a classroom. So pronunciation linked to speaking activities just gives you a new dimension. And what I found when I started teaching is that I was interested in pronunciation anyway. But when I started integrating these activities into even grammar points or reading or whatever it was, the students really enjoyed it and appreciated it because it's coming at it from a different angle. It's a bit more interactive. It's a bit more physical.
And it helps to make sense.
And it helps them make use of the language they're learning, so they could see the benefits immediately. We're trying to suggest things as well. I don't think we've made this point yet. We want it to be either low or no materials. So
exactly.
And again, because when you say integrating, it's got to be something that you can do without a lot of preparation, and where you can bring that into the elements of the course book. Think about a kind of bite-sized learning type approach. And even if you just aim for 2 elements of the 6 that we discussed at the beginning. So Paul, for example, has just said, with new vocabulary, mark the stress. If that becomes something that you do as a matter of course, or that you ask your students to think about when they're learning a new word, can anybody hear how many syllables does this word have, and where is the stress? Or, okay, so this is the noun, but what about the verb? Is the stress in the same place? It doesn't have to be a long thing or a complicated thing, but it's teaching and learning and giving a context around sound, which is really important and which is often missing from course books.
It's also something that students can go away and find out for themselves, and then they can come back and you give them 5 minutes at the beginning of the class to look at the vocabulary, but ensure that when they're looking at vocabulary that they have learnt at home from the course book, that they're also checking the pronunciation. Very important. So meaning, form, and pronunciation. Well, I think we've got 5 minutes left, Jenny. Wow. So let's dash on to some of the handouts that we've got. I think.
Yeah. So we've got. Have we got a visual of?
I hope we have.
Yes. Okay, great. All right. So brilliant. Well, so this slide that we can see now is actually excellent. This one's taken from the say it, so the waveform and the spelling and the little IPA spelling indicated there is taken from the Say It English pronunciation app, which we talked about a bit earlier. This app is it has 100 sample words in the free downloadable version. So if you or your students are interested in doing some practice, the idea of this app is that it makes sound visual and interactive. So you see the model sound wave, you can drag your finger over it to hear the breakdown of the sounds, how they blend together, and then record yourself and compare your sound wave. And the little IPA blocks are also tappable to hear the sounds. So using this, even the free version with 100 words, it covers all 44 sounds in standard English, is going to be perhaps a different and interesting way to look at pronunciation and make it visual. The app is called Say It English Pronunciation, and it's on the App Store and Google Play.
You can find that. Yep,
you can find that. And this shows
we have about 16 comments that have been starred in the chat. I'm aware that time is moving on. So thanks for that. What else do we have?
We can move through these.
Move through these quickly.
Well, this one, I just want to say here, this is making the sound difference between the voiced z and the unvoiced s, making it really clear on the sound wave. Z,
very clear.
Voiced, big sound on the sound wave. S, unvoiced, compressed sound.
And again, if you're in class, it's just simply a question of asking students to be aware of the voice.
And actually, this is vowel length as well, isn't it? And this is a different type of vowel length. This is vowel length before voiced and unvoiced sound.
Yeah. Yep.
So right, and then I think are we on? Okay, you can also use jokes like this one, which is why was 6 feeling scared? Because 7, 8, 9. There are some great homophone pun type jokes in English, which
that's a lovely one.
That's quite nice. And have we got one more? Oh, it's another homophone joke. This one's a bit more complicated. What did one homophone say to the other to comfort them? There.
This is a bit cultural as well, because
it is a bit, you're right.
In England, a lot of mothers would comfort their child by saying, there,
no.
don't worry, Michael. Yeah.
That's
so
true.
It's actually a bit,
It's a bit of a cultural insight as well as a homophone pronunciation joke.
And then moving on, these are again, I'll repeat, these are handouts that you can download on the Scan Me with your QR code. Make sure you have your phone ready.
Yeah, if you like them. What's the next? Have we got yours next, Paul? Like a visual reference?
Yeah, this is one handout in total. Let's move to the next. Can we please, Katie? Move to the
next slide. Because it would be really good. The next thing we're going to show you, I think, is just a visual reference of the handout that Paul's developed, which has got lots of activities that you can go and use in your classroom. Would we be able to move to the next slide?
No, I don't
We
think
don't have
we have
another
time.
slide.
No, we do not have another slide, but
Oh.
everything is in the
Oh, that's
There it is.
handout.
There it is.
Oh, there it is. We found it.
So
All right,
there we
brilliant.
have, and this is actually, I've checked it with the Scan Me. It's actually one whole 3-page handout in
pages.
PDF format. So
But these can be
have a look
broken
at
down,
that.
can't they, Paul? These are
Yes.
activities that can be integrated. It's not like one pronunciation lesson.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And
Lovely.
Katie, how much time do we have left to answer? I see
Any
we've
questions? Yeah.
got a lot of
You
starred
have
questions.
1 minute if you can
Oh,
answer a
goodness.
quick one.
Okay.
I know there's absolutely lots in there.
Well,
hard
Khalid
to know what-
Mahmood makes a point about native speakers. You know, what makes
Oh, yeah.
native speakers pronounce without learning about stress or aspiration, etc. I think, Khalid, you know, you make an extremely good point.
Yeah.
When you're learning a language as a child, you are simply absorbing like a sponge the voice waves, the tones, especially Chinese or Japanese, where tone is so important. But you're absorbing all of this and reproducing it naturally.
You learn the physical aspects that are needed for the sounds, the phoneme sounds in your mother tongue. So if you are a baby in another country, you'll learn the phoneme sounds that are set, that are relevant to the language you're hearing.
So the more we integrate pronunciation with the teaching of the language, the more we are paying attention to those features, the more natural pronunciation becomes for a learner.
Definitely. And I think stress, for example, you know, it's not the same in every language. So you may find, depending on the group of learners that you're working with, that you need to absolutely point out, okay, in English, this is different. Also, look at all the things that map on. I love to get a phonetic chart and talk to learners about how many of the consonant sounds in particular are exactly the same as the ones they're already using, right? So that you can put some nice big ticks against the stuff they can already do. And if there are new sounds, maybe there's a proximate sound. So, for example, the ng at the end of swing, which is quite tricky for learners of English. But if you're a French speaker, think about the word for crazy, dang, dang, and the sound at the end of that word, or apologies for my Spanish pronunciation, but banco, banco, you have that same sound at the back of the throat. So think about all the stuff that your learners can already do in English, and then focus on the bits that are tricky, useful, and frequent for them. That goes for sounds and vocabulary.
And that's pretty much what I would answer Pedro Pablo Balmaceda's question about a British accent. You don't need to teach a British accent, Pedro Pablo. What kind of accent have you got? And again, you know, if you want to go deeper into accents, then look at the Speech Accent Archive. But essentially, we're teaching in a world where English is an international language now, and the importance of international intelligibility is key. Quick repetition of Scan Me. Do use your mobile phone. Scan. Look at those URLs. Have a look at the professional development module, the position paper. We've got a lot of material. Which is
use our material. We're sharing because we want you guys to hopefully be able to just go away and use this. And don't forget.
This bear says, thank you very much for coming.
Yes, and this piece of paper says, I want to see lots of them flying around the classrooms of the world tomorrow or next week.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We love a prop.
Goodbye from me. Goodbye from Bear.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks,
that was so great, and you've got so many questions. Hopefully you're regulars on their channels anyway, so hopefully you can come back to them soon. But thank you very much, and like Paul said, do scan the QR code where you'll find all of the handout material there. I'm going to pop you off the screen now, but thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so we are now going to go into a short exhibition break where we'll play a series of videos. But before we do that, I just wanted to remind you again of the certificate process. So we have a certificate available for you to claim. Again, if you click the link in the comments, Jess or Rue, would you be able to pop that link in there again, or scan the QR code? You have 48 hours to redeem your certificate. So that will be available until Monday, the 12th of December. So now, yeah, we're going to go into a short break. I'm going to play a series of videos. Feel free to sit back, relax, go and grab some more snacks or drinks, and be back in 10 minutes ready for the next session. So thank you, everyone. And we will be in the comments if you need us. Let me just pop the video on. Thank you.
Morning, how are you?
Language is more than words on a page. It's how we express ourselves, how we share ideas. Learning a new language takes commitment, takes belief in yourself.
When he arrived home, he was shocked to discover how much...
Shocked to discover
how much old Hildegard was.
I care about the future of climate change. I read lots of articles about the environment in English. It helps me keep up with the debate.
Learning English opens the door to new opportunities.
Speaking English means I can reach customers all over the world.
New perspectives. New people.
Oh, sorry, let me help you.
It's okay.
It wasn't my intention.
Don't worry.
Every tiny step forward is part of something bigger, something better.
My brother makes fun of me, but I believe learning English will help me change the world.
The moment when you get it right. Moments when it takes all you've got. Moments when you connect. When you dream. When you grow. When you find the words.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, were you waiting for a long time?
No.
Okay, so shall we go inside?
Yeah.
How are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm nervous, but it's like, you know.
You know.
At Oxford University Press, we know that your work as an English language teacher evolves constantly. Teaching techniques and methods change. Your learners have different needs. But what about you?
This is a path full of so many things.
As our learners and our students evolve, flexibility is needed.
When it comes to challenges, we always have lots.
We need to be learning constantly. Everything's so changeable.
So to support and empower your teaching, we offer a variety of professional development opportunities designed for you and informed by your collective teaching experiences.
At Oxford University Press, we want to help teachers move forward and develop, and we want to support them as they go through this journey, taking into account what's happening on the ground, what's happening in classrooms.
Oxford University Press is always by their side, ready to listen and provide help and assistance wherever they can.
Underpinned by research on the most topical and important issues in English language teaching, lots of our materials cover a range of topics and methodologies and are available 24/7.
You'd find that there are all kinds of materials available to you. Become better informed about the context of teaching with techniques and solutions to take back to the classroom.
You can find position papers and focus papers on key areas with lots of ideas.
Global online events to connect, learn and grow.
We have global online events. These are really fantastic opportunities to bring together our teaching and learning communities.
It's great to see the interaction between other teachers and educators across the world.
We're here to support you, so you can be the best teacher that you can be.
Teachers embracing professional development will benefit.
As teachers, we should adapt ourselves into new conditions.
It will benefit your life and your students' life as well.
Life Vision. Where next? Why do your students want to be confident English speakers? To study more? To travel? For their career? Whatever their reason, Life Vision invites them to create their own unique vision of where language learning can take them. Life Vision transports your class to real-world environments through 360-degree interactive images, vlogs and documentary videos, with robust exam preparation and a comprehensive skills-based methodology. Life Vision helps your students harness the global opportunities that Confidence in English offers, whatever direction they choose. Life Vision. Where next? Visit www.oup.com/ELT.
Insight 2nd Edition. Challenging Ambitious Minds. The new edition of this trusted course will stretch your most curious students in their English language learning. Insight 2nd Edition is packed with rich and thought-provoking texts and videos about global issues to keep bright minds absorbed at every step of the way. Develop global skills like critical thinking, communication, and creativity through a strong syllabus that inspires students to deepen their awareness of real-world English and boosts their confidence in their language skills. Empower your students with strategies for lifelong learning, with assessment for learning support woven through the course. Insight 2nd Edition. Empower, develop, inspire for the next generation of global thinkers. Together we get results with Beehive. Bees are vital for the future of our planet. So are young learners, who have the skills to collaborate and achieve results. Beehive is a new primary course that helps students gain the life skills and the exam results they need to thrive. By combining a comprehensive grammar and vocabulary syllabus with an exciting collaborative learning approach, Beehive encourages children to work together to achieve a shared goal and develop collaborative skills that benefit them in the future. With every unit offering exciting team projects, think, feel, grow activities, and stories and videos from all over the world, Beehive empowers children to learn about the world around them, grow their global skills, and fly through their exams and beyond. Learn, grow, fly. Together, we get results with Beehive.
Help your English language learners to develop a reading habit. Take part in our 10-minute reading challenge with tips and resources to support reading, plus free access to Oxford Reading Club, our digital library with hundreds of graded readers. Learners can choose what they'd like to read at the right language level and read as much as they want, anytime, anywhere. Sign up for the 10-minute reading challenge today.
Hey, folks, how you all doing? You enjoying your break? So let me just address the certificate link. I can see that many of you are trying to click on it and saying it's not working. I think it's because there's about 1,000 of you clicking it at the same time. So it's very slow. You'll notice it's a queuing system. So if you do click on the link and open it, just wait. It's queuing. You'll get your place later. But also remember that that link is valid until 9 UTC time on Monday morning. So you don't necessarily have to get the certificate now. You won't get it now anyway. You're just signing up for it. So do be patient. I realise it is annoying, and I can see from myself that there is that it is slow and not working 100% correctly. But that's because there are so many of you here at the event, and you are obviously all using the break to try and get the certificate. So do bear with it. Hopefully it'll as people are able to sign up and leave, it will open up another space. It's a bit like getting tickets, I guess, for your favorite band. You know, when the tickets go on sale and the website crashes, I think we're kind of doing that with certificates for this. So do be patient. We are aware that it is slow. We're looking at what we can do. But hopefully, as I said, you've got a good 30 odd hours still, 40 odd hours still to get that certificate. And you can go on that link at any time. If you're not sure what we're talking about because you've just joined us in up here somewhere above my head on the left, right over there, there's a QR code. And if you click on that QR code, it will take you to what we call the links bio, and you will find all the links of all the sessions and that in there. So if you were in Paul and Jenny's session and want to link through to their things, you can go on that link and it will take you through to a page of the links, and there you'll find things like the ELTOC schedule, because we've still got the second block coming up. You will also find the link to the certificate, and you'll find the link to all the resources and things that have been mentioned so far. So, slow links aside, how is everyone? Are we okay? We're about 3 minutes away from Jamie. I was during the break. I was reading Jamie's bio, getting ready for it, and it made me realise how long I've known Jamie for. It's a long time. Well, I shall mention that to him when he arrives in the studio in a moment. Well, he's here. He's just not with you yet. But it's a long time, but it's also a long time since I last heard him tell me a story. So I'm very much looking forward to him coming up in about 3 minutes. But as I said, how are you all? You all okay? All enjoyed the first couple of sessions today. Some really interesting things. Hi, Kasia from Poland. How are you doing? Good evening, Pakistan. Hi, Khalid in Pakistan. Good evening to you. Yes, I always say good morning. Well, it's actually good afternoon here in Oxford, but good morning still to some of you. Good evening to many of you. It's very easy to forget when you're sat there that it is morning, evening, and afternoon, or maybe not in that order, but all at the same time. So a reminder before we go on that ELTOC Chapter 4 is an open event, so there's no need to sign up. So if you've got teacher friends who you think would enjoy these talks, do share the links with them, do pass them on. And I think it's 2 a.m. my time, UTC time. The block 2 will begin, and of course that you can join in that exactly the same way. Go to the YouTube channel, the LinkedIn page, or the Facebook channel, and join in. Good morning. You see, just to prove the point, the last 3 comments I see say good morning, good evening, good afternoon in that order. So it's good to see everyone is with us. Still morning in Brazil. Good evening, Teacher Sean. It's a long time since I've taught, I think. Right, so we're almost ready for the final session of this block. I can't believe the first 2 sessions have already gone, and we're 1 away from closing the block. So next up, I'm going to put you on screen very shortly, Jamie, so be ready. We're about to close the block then, the last part of this block. So I hope you're ready for a bit of storytelling. Got your tea made in the break, got your coffee made, whatever you need, and we're gonna sit comfortably and get ready for some storytelling. So as I've just said, block 1 is closing with our storytelling expert, and that's Jamie Cady. He's going to build a case for teacher-led storytelling and help us find the stories worth sharing that might be right under our noses. I said it feels like I've known Jamie for an age. So Jamie is the founder of Lesson Stream, which is a community of teachers with a passion for using stories to engage students. He's the author of Images, which is 2008, and that's when I remember meeting him for the first time around that book. So that's a long time. Bringing online videos into the classroom, a book that I still dip into from time to time, and it's actually there on my shelf, in fact. And that came out in 2014. His book on video telling in YouTube and stories of the classroom came out in 2017. And when he's not doing books and telling stories, he's an affiliate trainer at the Norwich Institute for Language Education. He is a master storyteller and someone I can listen to many times. So, Jamie, welcome to ELTOC.
Hello, Sean.
You right? You
How
ready to
lovely.
go?
Yes, I am. Lovely to see you. It has been a while.
It has, yeah.
Yeah.
Damn pandemics and things like that. But I look forward to seeing you face to face at some point. Jamie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you so much to Oxford University Press for inviting me to be here. And thank you to you ELTOCers. Hope you're having a lovely day, lovely afternoon for me. I'm in Barcelona. I don't know if you can hear that. That's a familiar sound of a siren that goes past my flat because I live in a very busy street here. And hello, yeah, lots of people from all over the place here. How fantastic. This is what it's all about. I don't know if anybody read the summary of what this talk's all about, but I don't always do this. In fact, I very rarely do, but I thought maybe I would just read it out to you just to kind of contextualize what this is all about. Well, first of all, just in case you don't know, I think the title's there. This is a session called Stories from the Teacher. That's us, obviously, Stories from the Teacher. And I've started by saying one thing that fascinates human beings is other human beings. And as the teacher, your students will be naturally curious about you. It's absolutely true. We all know this. Our students are naturally curious about who we are. These strange beings that they get to stand at the front of the classroom. Who are they? Sharing stories with students does not mean trying to impress them. This is important because I once had a teacher who used to try and impress us, his students, with stories, showing off, that kind of thing. That's not what we're talking about. It's often the case that the most valuable stories might be those which are meaningful but unremarkable. And that's very important. Let me start by asking you a question. Do you consider yourself to be a storyteller in the classroom? Just type yes or no. Do you consider yourself to be a storyteller in the classroom? Because it's an interesting question. It's one I've been asking for a long time. And the answers I get back often depend on how teachers see this word or this activity or this thing, storytelling. And so we've got lots of yeses. We've got some no's. Yes, of course, says Nicole. Sometimes, says Milena. Oh, yes, says Peggy. My favorite answer so far. And not too much, says Karina. And I wonder, what when you think of a storyteller in the classroom, what do you think of? I mean, it connects so often with maybe storytelling connects with stories of long ago, far away, folk tales, that kind of thing. Also very much with teachers of younger learners. And we think about story time, that special moment, maybe a Friday afternoon. But I would say no to all of these things. I've learned some great things from teachers of young learners, for example, acting techniques, coming to life and becoming your characters in the story. But I'd like to maybe make it a lot more broad than that. I think that storytelling is not niche, or at least it should not be niche. It should not be for certain classes. Storytelling is for everyone, for teenagers, for adults, for business English context, for English for specific purposes. And I think this is a very important way to get started. Let me give you an example of a story. Shall we do this? Let's start with a story, then we can talk about some of the theory after that. And I've got my eye on your chat here. There's a lot of it coming in. This is a story. Let's go back to December 1980. I wonder if you can guess how old I was in December 1980. I was at primary school in December 1980. This is exactly 42 years ago this month, isn't it? I was exactly 55 years old. I bet Sean specifically chose that answer to put on the screen, right? I wasn't 55 years old then. I'm not 55 years old now. Back then, Mary Potter's, I was a baby back then. I was 8 years old. 8 years old. And I was at primary school in December. In my primary school in Scotland, which is where I'm from, was a very big deal because December at my primary school in Scotland meant one thing, and that was the annual Christmas card competition. It was such a big deal, the annual Christmas card competition. Everyone in the school had to design a Christmas card. And there was no separation from years. This was every child for themselves, you know. And competition was really, really fierce because everybody wanted to win. We were all driven by the prestige of these fantastic prizes. And the prizes were, if you got third place, you would get exactly 50 copies, 50 printed copies of your Christmas card. If you got second place, you got 100 printed copies of your Christmas card. And if you won first place, you won't believe this, 150 copies of your printed Christmas card. Imagine that. Amazing, no? Back in those days, I wonder if there's any teachers here or students who will remember it. We didn't have those modern day photocopies. We had this thing called spirit duplication, I think it's called, and they were all black and white, or rather maybe less black and white and more kind of pink and purple. Do you remember them? And the teacher would bring in these duplicates, spirit duplicates, if that's what they call them. They'd be warm off the press and they'd smell sweet. There's a chemical smell. We'd pick up the paper and go, ah. I bet the teacher was doing that too before she walked in the room. And so imagine that. Now, my Christmas card design, I decided to do one, a drawing of Santa Claus or Father Christmas. And I spent some time creating this design and making this Christmas card. Maybe you'd like to see it. Here it is. What do you think of that? This is my Christmas card. This was my entry for the 1980 Yester Primary School in Scotland Christmas card competition. Santa's here. There's Santa, a big Santa in the middle, decorated by holly, and Santa's here. Santa, what is Loris is awesome. What do you? Yeah, I like nice as Amina. I'm not fishing for compliments here. Margarita says I still have it. How well do you think I got on? This was, let me tell you, you want to know how well did I do? Well, the fact that I'm showing you this print of a pink and purple copy might tell you that, in fact, I won one of the prizes. Thank you, Mike. It's a lovely card. You're so nice. This design came first in the school. I beat 250 other students with my card. This is it, with my design. And for that whole month of December, I was the golden boy of the school. Not only did I get 150 print copies of my card, but it featured in the school magazine. And I got so much praise from the teachers, my teacher, and also my father. My father's an architect. I remember him saying, wow, what fantastic technical and artistry from an 8-year-old boy. I was 8 years old. I don't remember if I told you that. From an 8-year-old boy, what fantastic artistry. What a fine eye for the human form. And I was given so much praise for this. And I really enjoyed it. I really did. I remember my head getting slightly big. You know, this is what happens in English as an idiom. When you get praise, you might get a big head. And that's what happened to me. I got a slight big head. And it's now time for me. I just remember my mum said, 150 cards? What are you going to do with 150 cards? You only know 6 people. And she had a point. I only managed to send out about 7 or 8 of them. One to my granny and granddad and the rest to my friends. Anyway, it's now time for me to come clean with you and admit a dirty secret that I've been carrying around with me for 42 years. 42 years I've been living. It's been really hard. I've been living with guilt. I wonder if you can see where this is going. Can anyone see where this is going? Now, let me show you something here. This is one of my favorite Christmas books. I wonder if you know it. It's called Father Christmas. And this is by Raymond Briggs, the author Raymond Briggs. A beautiful, beautiful book. And the Father Christmas in here, rather than being this jolly old man who loves the Christmas spirit and says, ho, 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 he's this grumpy old man that actually hates Christmas and everything that goes with it, except, of course, the sherry. He loves a glass of sherry, you know, this fortified wine that we associate with Christmas time. Apart from the sherry, Father Christmas in this book hates everything else. He's a miserable old man. John says, you pinched it off someone else, you naughty boy. Let me just show you here on this page. Do you see Santa Claus, Father Christmas there, passing the milkman? Milkman says, still at it. And Father Christmas says, nearly done. Well, let's just let me show you this. Do you see do you see the resemblance of my Father Christmas? It's interesting, isn't it? I can tell you, I didn't trace it. In other words, I didn't put the paper physically over the book and draw around it. I actually did copy it with my eye. It's gone a little bit wrong at times, hasn't it? I'm not very good at drawing faces, so I just kind of turned his big white bushy beard into a sort of big black beard to conceal the fact that my technical skills didn't extend to the human face. And it's funny, you know, because for a long, long time, it's left me with this dilemma. And I've seen a few of your comments. Laura said, this is what artists do, for example. Somebody said this is plagiarism, but it has left me with this dilemma. There's two ways of looking at this. Number one, it was dishonest, you know? It was a case of plagiarism. I didn't tell anyone that I'd copied it. I took all the praise. I lavished the praise from the teachers and from my father in full knowledge that if people had known the truth, it probably would have invalidated the praise that I was getting. I was aware of that. I had this awareness. But I still remember having this slight feeling of guilt. But I took the prizes. I took the 150 copies. So that's the worst way of looking, the first way of looking at it. This was a case of plagiarism. Number two, on the other hand, there was nothing, you know, to say that there's anything wrong with this. This is a case of copy and mix. And this is what artists do all the time, as has already been said. You know, there's nothing wrong with taking inspiration from other sources. Maybe you could say there's a case that it was actually quite creative. Copy and remix are essential for any individual to develop drawing skills or indeed any creative skills at all. So perhaps there's something actually quite real, quite honest, and quite necessary and natural. And I'd like to see what you think about this. I'd like you to type into the chat either plagiarism or inspiration. Okay, plagiarism or inspiration. In other words, was this dishonest or was this honest? I'd love to know what you think here. We're going to... Ellie says, my Santa looks more like a retired ballet teacher. How funny. So inspiration, we've got inspiration. Both, says Alina. Inspiration. I think you're being very kind to me. I still think Abdullah says plagiarism. We got two cases of plagiarism. It's not black and white, is it? There's somewhere in the middle, but I think you can definitely build a case. And a story like this, for me, as a teacher, is gold. Maya says, if you feel guilty, it's plagiarism. Okay, that's a very, very good. And this is the conversation I'd be hoping to have with my students if and when I have used this story in the classroom. A story from the teacher like this can be short and sweet, unremarkable and yet meaningful. And specifically in this case, we can use stories to bring issues and topics into the classroom. And that's what this is all about. I'll say that again. For me, a good story from the teacher is unremarkable and yet meaningful. You don't want to use your stories. I mean, if you've got some incredible stories and some absolutely incredible stories, it might impress people, but they're not going to be relatable. And that's part of the problem. You want your stories to be relatable. You want them to touch people. You want them possibly to unlock experiences and memories in your students. Therefore, the more sort of unremarkable they can be, the better, as long as we can make them meaningful. So the other thing I said is short and sweet. When I'm thinking about teacher-led storytelling in the classroom, I'm never thinking of a teacher standing there for 20 minutes and talking. I'm talking just a few minutes, and if you can make it interactive to kind of slow things down, all the better. Ask questions along the way, for example, which is what I did here. Can you guess how old I was in 1980? You don't have to bring that into your classroom, but it's just an example of a curiosity-packed question that you can use. And the other thing I said, I didn't say this, the secret to successful storytelling. I wonder if you can guess what it is. What is the secret to successful storytelling? Just type your answer in the chat. I'd love to see what you think. What is the secret to successful storytelling? One word. One word. I'll tell you in my mind what it is. In my mind, the secret to successful storytelling is, I'm watching your all of these are very important. We've got suspense, being creative, making students curious, the details, interpretation, being truthful. In fact, truthful is a good word because you want to find your truth or find some sort of truth in a story. A good story is a portrait of human life. You say, yes, this is what life is like. This is true. So I like that word. But in my mind, and in my experience, and in my training course, I have a course, the Lesson Stream Story course. There is one single thing that I think is the most important ingredient to successful storytelling, and that is preparation. Preparation. It seems so obvious, doesn't it? But a good storyteller might make you think that he or she is being improvised and spontaneous, and there are elements of that. But more importantly, successful storytelling takes work. It takes a lot of thought, a lot of preparation. What's your way in? How are you going to start your story? How are you going to structure your story? What questions are you going to ask? What language choices are you going to make? How are you going to finish your story? What does your story mean? Why are you telling it? How did it change you, perhaps? What portrait of human life does this show? Or in my case, there's a very good reason for me using this story. I want to bring in the issue of plagiarism and have a discussion with my students about what is good, what is bad, what is honest, what is dishonest, what is plagiarism, the type that they should not be doing. And it's actually not actually so subjective. It's quite, there's quite some objective answers to that question. And these are the kinds of things that we explore. So, we think of, if you think of teacher-led storytelling, if you think of the teacher as a storyteller, it can be quite easy for us to think about, too much teacher talk, for example. But no, there's nothing wrong, is there, with using texts in the classroom? We all do it. A teacher story is just a text. It's an embodied text. It's a text that we can slow down, speed up, ask questions, repeat parts. And so it's a very, very effective way of teaching. It's also a great way for us as teachers to develop our classroom communicative skills. Okay, let's have another story, shall we? Another story, because I know you don't want too much theory for this session of the day. Now, I'm going to give you a few sentences here for story number 2, and you have to see if you can identify what it is. What is it? And if you think you know the answer, don't tell us. Don't say the answer. Just say, yes, I know what it is. Okay? Don't say what it is. Just say, yes, I know what it is. Or you can say, no, I don't know what it is. But here, number one, it was discovered in 1962. Wow, that's exactly 60 years ago. It was discovered in 1962 by a German man called Peter Frankenfeld. No Googling, okay? It was discovered in 1962 by a German man called Peter Frankenfeld. It was discovered in Blackpool. Blackpool's a seaside resort in the northwest of England. Some of you may know it. That's where it was discovered. I tried these questions with my sister a few days ago, and she said, what do you mean by discovered? Is this something that nobody had ever discovered before? And I said, no, discovered in the way that Christopher Columbus discovered America. It had already been, people knew about its existence. You can't really say that Christopher Columbus discovered America, can you? Because people knew about it before. People who lived in America, for a start, Americans. But yes, it was discovered by this German man called Peter Frankenfeld, discovered in Blackpool, a seaside resort in northwest England. In many countries, it's associated with New Year's Eve, the 31st of December. Now, some of you might be thinking, yes, I know what it is. Don't shout out your answers. Just type in the chat. Yes, I think I know. It's just under 18 minutes long. It's just under 18 minutes long. This is the interesting part. This is the most repeated TV program in the history of television. Now you might be thinking, this is the most repeated TV program in the history of television. And if you don't know what this is, but you're definitely going to know what it is now when I say this last part. I don't think that made much sense what I just said, did it? It's famous for the following catchphrase, which is, same procedure as last year, same procedure as every year. Now I'm watching your okay, Agnes knows what this is, don't you? Most of you don't. Now, this is a fascinating story. This is an absolutely fascinating story. If you are from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Norway, Estonia, or possibly Australia or South Africa, you know exactly what this is, because this is a very important part of December for you. Let me just show you what it is. Here's a page from a German TV guide from 31st of December last year. Can you see this? And I've taken a red marker pen and I've circled all of the instances which this TV program, this 18-minute long TV program, which is shown multiple times at different parts of the day over different TV channels on Germany, Luxembourg, Austria, etc. It's called Dinner for One. And I can only assume that there aren't many native German speakers here, because I know that you will never find, it's been said that there is no such thing in this world as a native German speaker who does not know the catchphrase, same procedure as last year, same procedure as every year. Some of you might have seen documentaries about this. Gaspar Alonso said you've seen this maybe in the Discovery Channel. Yes, but what makes this so fantastic is that it's a comedy sketch. It lasts 18 minutes. It originated in the United Kingdom. It was written by an Englishman called Laurie Wiley. He wrote it in the 1920s. This is 100 years ago. A quintessentially English comedy sketch, or British. And the fantastic thing is that nobody in the United Kingdom has ever heard of it, you know? And so this is a very interesting story. When you go back, to 1920s, some people may have heard of it, but nowadays it's huge in Germany. This man here, whose name is Freddie Frinton, is the most famous English actor, comedian in Germany. And yet in the UK, very few people have heard of him. So I was wondering if we'd have any Germans here today, but apparently not. But let me just quickly tell you the story. It's imagine this. This is how the comedy sketch starts, okay? This is how it starts. We're in a dining room. And so this is what Germans, Austrians, Swiss, Estonians, Luxembourgers, this is what they watch on New Year's Eve. It's traditional. We start in a big dining room in a very fancy house. There's a long dining table in the middle of the room. There's portraits hanging in the wall. The dining room is set for 5 places. There's a tiger skin rug on the floor. And James, the butler, this man here, he's setting the dining table, as I mentioned, for 5 places. You see, this is a special day. This is Miss Sophie's 90th birthday. And this year, as she does every year, she has invited her 4 best friends for a special birthday dinner. And her best friends are Sir Toby, Mr. Winterbottom, Mr. Pomeroy, and Admiral von Schneider, you see. And there are 4 courses for this special birthday dinner. The first course is soup, and every course is served with a different drink. So it's soup served with dry sherry, and then it's fish served with white wine, then it's chicken served with champagne, and finally fruit served with port. The thing is, throughout the duration of this dinner, one of the people in the room gets more and more drunk. And this is what makes it very funny. And this is the thing that makes all our Dinner for One friends, or people who know this Dinner for One program, think this is so funny. It's this actor here, this comedian here, Freddie Frinton. Now, it's 80 minutes long. If you've never seen this before, you have to watch it, because you might think it's quite funny. But if you've got any German friends, do absolutely get in touch with them and ask them. In fact, I would suggest you even use video call to bring them into your classroom. Anyway, I thought you might like that. If we were in the classroom right now, we'd watch it, find out what you think of that. It's a great story for this time of the year, and I would get your students to maybe watch it. Sean mentioned my community called Lesson Stream, and one of my members who lives in Germany, when it was her birthday, all of her friends acted out this comedy sketch for her, Dinner for One. That is an example of how a teacher can kind of use storytelling to sort of mediate a piece of material. You know, we would go on from this stage to watch the video, wouldn't we? But it wasn't just a case of me saying to students, I want to let you see a video. You know, it was a case of me contextualizing it, telling you the story of it. And that's something that I think teachers so often forget. We take a video, a short film, an image, a text, a song, and we play it for our students, we deliver it to students, we distribute it to our students, but so often we forget to contextualize it. Tell students what this is all about. Tell students how you found it, why it's meaningful or special to you, or how it found you. This is something that's so often overlooked. And what I did there was a technique that I refer to often as video telling, which we actually can even narrate parts of the video itself. Okay, what time for one last story, I think. One last story. And this is a story. This is something I've done for you. This is very, very special. Let me show you something I've got here. Wow, what about that? Can you see this? Now, I've never made one of these for my students, but I've made this especially for you. Do you know what this is? This is a dessert that I associate with this time of the year. It was something we used to eat in the holidays. Diana says it's yummy, and it very much is yummy. Giovanna says, is it a tiramisu? It's very similar to a tiramisu. In the bottom layer, you see we've got cake and sponge mixed with fruit. I don't think you have fruit in a tiramisu. Diana's got it. This is a trifle. This is a trifle, very, very important dessert. So you've got fruit, and you've got sponge, and sometimes jelly, and custard or blancmange is the middle layer, and cream in the top. And it's decorated here with these little Italian biscuits, which are called, what are they called again? I forgot, but what are these little Italian biscuits called? Please let me know, because my mind has gone blank. I had to go out and buy them in an Italian shop especially, but this is what I'm going to be eating later for my dessert tonight. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because my grandmother, her name is Alison, no longer with us, but she was very famous for her trifles. Amaretti. Thank you very much, Paula. Like little macaroons, aren't they? They're great, these little biscuits. My granny, she was famous. This is my mother's mother. She was famous for her trifles. Much better than this, much better than this. My trifle is just an amateur trifle. The trifles that my granny would make were so special. And we used to go to my granny and granddad's house round about the 20th or the 21st of December every year for traditional lunch. And my granny, I suppose, would get up very early in the morning and she'd make a trifle. And that would be the most important part of the lunch, Granny's trifle. And it was so much fancier than mine. And one year, I'm going to guess it might have been around the same time as the Christmas card, 1980, maybe 1982, 1984, something like that. I'm going to guess I was around 10 years old. And my sister and I were in the house, my granny and granddad's house, and the table was set. And there was little sausage rolls, little sausages, and little sandwiches, and plates, and napkins, and there in the corner was the trifle. And I said to my sister, well, most importantly, I should have said, there were no adults around. And I said to my sister, watch this. And guess what I did? I took one of the Amaretti biscuits and I poked it down just a tiny little bit into the trifle, like this. And my sister said, you shouldn't do that. And I said, nonsense. I can do it if I want. So I poked it just a little bit more. Now, I was wondering if it would work in this trifle. It's not, because my finger's just sticking straight in. The Amaretti biscuit has completely disappeared. That didn't happen in my granny's trifle. On my granny's trifle, it created a well, a hole, so you could actually still see the Amaretti biscuit as it burrowed down into the center of this trifle. And the more I did it, the more my sister was laughing and saying, you're going to get into so much trouble. And I said, nonsense. So I put it down as far as I possibly could, right to the bottom of the trifle. I've done it right now, but my finger's just getting lost. So I guess if that worked, well, you can see there's a bit of a sort of well in the trifle there, but yeah, it's not worked for this trifle. You needed my granny's trifle to make this work. But anyway, when I'd got the trifle down as far as it could go with my finger, then I decided to use a pencil to get it as even further down. And by the end of it, it looked like there was a big sinkhole. You know, those sinkholes that open up in the street, cause a lot of chaos and surprise. It looked like it was a giant sinkhole in the middle of my... It's nice, very nice, actually. Not as good as my granny's, but not bad, I should say. Right in the middle of my trifle. And my sister said, you're in so much trouble. The thing about my granny, she could get angry sometimes, and she'd get quite angry sometimes. And I had seen her angry in my life, but never with me, never with my sister. As far as I was aware, she was my kind granny that never lost her temper. And I thought that everything would be fine. I thought that I had immunity from the wrath of my grandmother. Not on that day. I remember they all came downstairs when it was dinner time, and I remember my dad saw it first, and he saw this trifle with a giant hole in the middle. And he said, who did that? Looking at me, looking at my sister. My sister pointed to me. My granny saw it. Oh my goodness. I don't know. I never saw my granny so angry or upset. She never ever shouted at me until this day. She went crazy at me. Then my mum started going crazy at me. My dad started going crazy at me. My sister was loving this. She really was. She was loving this. But what I remember so much about this story was on the way home in the car. This was something that was typical me. I'd always try and find an excuse. The dog did it. If only we had a dog, that would have been a perfect excuse, teacher Lisa. But I was always trying to find an excuse. And what I remember so much about this is my dad said, Jamie, stop it. Stop trying to find an excuse to say this. It was a stupid thing to do, and you did it. I guess nowadays he might have said, take ownership of it, but we didn't use that piece of language back then. What he said to me, there's only one thing you can say here, and it was a second conditional. There's only one thing you can say here, Jamie, and that is, if I could go back in time, I would not do it again. And this second conditional really stuck in my mind, and it kind of, I must have developed, I must have matured a little part, because I thought, yes, my dad's absolutely right. I remember doing a few I did many more stupid things in my life. I remember actually once saying that back to my dad when he was shouting back at me. I said, Dad, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't do it again. I actually made him laugh. He said, okay, you're learning. And I've used this story with my students. I never once made them a trifle, but we've used pictures of trifle from Google image search to show them a trifle and tell them this, and to, you know, as a way into a language point, which is the second conditional. Why should we not use a short story as a way to illustrate a single good example of a grammar structure, of a form, which can be memorable for students, which you can write on the wall with a picture of a trifle, which will embed itself in your student's mind forever. Maria Gracia, you're very kind. Thank you very much. I'm going to give you a little, I lied to you, actually. I've told you a little lie. My parents are here in Barcelona right now visiting me, and I did not make this trifle. My mum made it. And I was hoping to make a big hole in it for a little surprise when they get back. Let me just quickly show you something here, because last night we had a very special evening. For the first time ever, they're Scottish, just like me, and here they are in the corner. I showed them for the very, very first time Dinner for One. So they've just watched it, and the verdict was they think it's very good. That takes me to the end of this session. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Questions about storytelling in general, or maybe trifles, Christmas cards, anything you'd like to say? Mariposa says, you're an amazing storyteller, Jamie. That's very, very nice of you to say. But the thing is, this is a skill. It's a skill that we can develop. It really, really is. I know that I used to suck at telling stories. I know that. And it wasn't until I started teaching and embracing stories and becoming a conference speaker that I started to develop this as a skill. One of the greatest things when you develop as a storyteller, you develop your classroom communicative skills. You get also this really, really sort of important awareness that less is more. So strangely, if we want to keep our teacher talk down, we can embrace storytelling and become concise, and it will help you develop your explanations that you give. It will help you develop your definitions, your examples that you give, the instructions that you give. It allows you to find ways into topics and issues for discussion. And I'll say it one more time to stress it. It's not about filling the classroom with the teacher's voice. It's using short embodied texts as a way in. And, you know, it's very important, isn't it, that students can do this. You know, I would say that storytelling is the quintessential 21st century skill, but it's so often forgotten. Last week, I did a workshop with a group of young 20-year-olds and at a vocational college here in Barcelona. And we were talking, why? What's the value of storytelling if you're a young 20-year-old? Well, they're all going on to get jobs. You know, they've got job interviews coming up. And job interviews, you ask questions like, tell us about a time where you made a decision that was a good decision, or something you did which was a success. They're asking for stories. If you can tell a story at a job interview, and I think for 20-year-olds, it's maybe not about something you did that was a success, but maybe more importantly, something you did which was a failure, but something that you learned from. If you can tell, you know, a job interview or about something you did which was a failure, but you learned from it, you're demonstrating your development as a human being. And as a job interviewer, that's what I would want to hear. Did you ever think about equipping students with storytelling skills for passing job interviews? It's just one of many purposes of storytelling. We use storytelling to, engage, to connect with people, for small talk. People use storytelling to win elections, So storytelling is the quintessential 21st century skill. And as language teachers, we can develop it and lead by example. It's 2:25 where I am in Barcelona. That means it's the end of the talk. Hello, Sean.
Hello. Yeah, I was just waiting for a moment to come in. There was one question I did see that's coming through at the end there a little bit. Was maybe distill it into one thing. What would be one tip you would give as a storyteller? Is it the tone of voice? Is it the body language to make me a good storyteller? What would be the one tip?
Okay, very good question. A lot of teachers might feel they lack the confidence for it. A lot of teachers might feel they've got too much to remember. And the one tip, use notes. That will give you confidence. And I'm talking very much specifically here about Sean, about the performance part of it. But we're not talking about being a slave to notes, just some very basic notes that you can have in your hand. Did you realize, Sean, that I was using notes today as we did this?
I didn't know if you had notes. I thought the props were an integral part of it, but
there's some notes here that I was using. My eyes were going down every now and again just to find places. There was a part I forgot. I wanted to show you my parents watching that program last night. I forgot it, but brought it in at the end. But it doesn't matter. Use notes. Notes give you some confidence. If you lose your place, you can come back. And creating notes is a very important part of the development, the preparation. So notes give you confidence. Do you think that's I
think that's a really good key. Yeah, and I think what you said, it's not that you're a slave to the notes, is it? They're an aid memoir or something in order for you to continue. I was gutted when you said you hadn't actually made that trifle yourself, though. I must admit, I thought, oh well, there's a skill set, but I do so want a trifle. That was the other question. There's a lot of people asking for the recipe for the trifle, and it's very interesting because you see the intercultural thing. People talking about, is the topping mascarpone or ricotta or whatever. It's cream, isn't it?
It's custard in the middle and it's whipped cream on top. But we had to use the one out, the squishy one, Sean, which isn't quite ideal.
Yes, that's what people were saying. Your cream wasn't set enough, but there you go. Maybe in a future ELTOC we will have a recipe sharing session. Thank you also for reminding me of For Dinner for One. I like you said, as a person living in England, you never see it. When I went to live in the Czech Republic, Dinner for One, always on telly on New Year. It's one of those things.
Can I say one more thing?
Please do,
Sean.
yeah.
Just if anyone would like to sign up for my newsletter, I send out regular recipes for trifle, story ideas for teachers, that kind of thing. Just go to lessonstream.com and it's all there. In fact, I'll drop it into the chat right now.
Perfect. There you go.
There we are. I've just done that. All free.
And I'm sorry, if you've never used any of Jamie's books or resources before, they really are a great aid to storytelling. And as people are saying, you are a master of your craft, as I predicted you would be. And thank you very much for joining us and bringing the first block to an end. So much to... wait for the pun. So much to digest, but so thank you, Jamie. I shall drop you out the stream now, and we'll move towards ending that. So I hope you all enjoyed Jamie's stories. I'm sure if you're desperate to find a recipe for trifle, if you Google British trifle, it is a very, as Jamie was saying, it is a very, I guess it is it's something that I have memories of with my childhood and Christmas, and in fact my gran as well. So it's clearly part of our culture. But thanks a lot, Jamie, for doing that. Lots of thank yous coming into the box. I did look on YouTube actually during while Jamie was speaking, and I think if you actually Google, if you put YouTube dinner for one into the search, you'll find a version of it. So if you're desperate, as Jamie said, he would, the next stage would be for people to watch it. So maybe between block 1 and block 2, what you can now go and do is watch dinner for 1 and then report back on it. It is very funny. Despite its age, it still remains quite funny. So we are coming towards the end of the first block, ladies and gentlemen. They always go so quickly, don't they? I think while Jamie was talking, we managed to fix and ensure that the certificate link is working a bit quicker. Do bear in mind that there are still a lot of you clicking on that link, so you might need to show a little bit of patience. But if you click on the link to the certificate, it will take you to a web page, and then there's like a queuing system, and then you can enter your information, and then you will be able to get the certificate, which as always comes in something like 5 to 10 working days afterwards. If you are just joining us and you don't know what we're talking about, if you look in the comment box now, you will see that there's a comment from Oxford University Press. That's the link to the certificate. Or if you have a mobile phone, you can scan the image, which is above my head, and that will take you to the link bio. And I'm going to go through that what's in there in a little while, just before we go off. So there you go. The link is going through. You can see that that link that says get your ELTOC certificate is where you need to be. Do bear in mind that while there is no rush to do it now, you will get it. You will need to do it before 9 a.m. UTC on Monday morning. So you got roughly just about 43 hours or so to click on that link. So no rush to do it now. But if you want to do it now, just be patient. You will go into there. Jamie's link was lesson stream. That's lesson LESSON stream STREAM. So if you Google that, you'll find what he was talking about. Okay, and just to remind you that, as I said, we are coming to the end of block 1, but block 2 is still ahead of us. That starts in about 12 and a half hours. 12 hours and 15 minutes, if I do my maths correctly. For some of you, that will be Saturday morning. So it's the early hours of Saturday morning. Some of you who have just woken up, it's probably later in your day. Remember, you don't have to sign up or anything if you want to go see block 2. Just follow the schedule. It will be again on YouTube, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn. And if you've watched this morning, and one of your colleagues, one of your friends you think would be interested, but foolishly didn't join us, then now's the time to send out a link on Facebook and remind them of what they've missed, and that they can still join in later on. And if you want that link, you can see it now. It's gone in there. Yes, 4:45 a.m. is too early, although that is the time I'm off to get a flight this morning, so I will be missing it, but I will be up at that time. So if you want to join in this afternoon or this evening's blog, then feel free, join in. You see there were so many of us on joining in, and so if you are here, you'll be able to talk and join in with other people. I can see so many of you are already saying you're going to join in. That's great. So we will see you tomorrow. You can see that we do have sessions coming up on extensive reading, on climate change, and I'm really interested by Chrissy's session of fingers and thumbs and communication fun. So I might catch that while I'm at the airport. So I've said it a few times, but above my head, it's that side. I keep pointing wrong on my camera, just over there. So above my head, there is that QR code. That QR code will take you to a link bio. And in the link bio, you will see a number of things. Okay, so this is a webpage where we collate all the links from today. So this is where you'll find the schedule. This is where you'll find the link to get a certificate. But it'll also take you to some resources. We have mentioned a number of resources throughout. So the link in the link bio, and hopefully will be appearing in the chat box, etc. in a moment. There's one of those links is a link that will allow you to get a free trial of some of Oxford University Press's best-selling English language courses. So that is on the Oxford English Hub, and you're going to get 90 days access to student book, workbook, what they call them, classroom presentation tools, etc. Everything. So if you go into the Oxford, click on the link to the Oxford English Hub, and then you're going to get the ability to redeem and get a 90-day free trial of one course book with all its material. There's also a link to join the Oxford Teachers Club. If you've never been in the Teachers Club, I love being in there. It's a digital destination that is just packed with loads of activities and materials. And I always kind of, even though I've got my course materials, I do go in there a lot just to find little exercises and other things that are there that I can put in to my lessons. So if you go to find the link for the Teachers Club, you'll get access to that. And again, the team are putting all those links into the chat box. If you can't scan the QR code directly, then all those links are in the chat box. It keeps coming because I'd also encourage you to explore all the professional development resources. I mean, obviously ELTOC is when we meet 4 times a year, is a fabulous way of us sharing our experience and resources. But outside of these events, you can keep up with learning and keep up with your development by looking at the professional development resources that are in that link that you can get with it. And finally, last but not least, there's also, I think Paul alluded to them earlier today, there are the focus and position papers that are available. And again, I think the link has already gone through for that one. So there are the position papers and focus papers. There's pronunciation, there's technology, there's motivation, there's assessment, and there's loads of them, which are really interesting. They are written by experts and they talk about all these areas. They're free and they give you not only guidance, but they give you resources to improve your teaching as well. Phew, if you've forgotten all that, if there's stuff you want, or if you've got questions, then obviously almost in all places where you are, you will have a local Oxford University Press team or educational consultant. So I would encourage you to contact them and or make a contact with them, and they will deal with any queries or questions you might have. I hope you have enjoyed this block. I think there's always, and I really like the way that the OUP did this in the live streams, is if you like the session, make sure you like it. But if you loved it, love it. So please do give us some immediate feedback on the likes and the loves. This will not only show us how we did in block 1, but it will make all your teacher friends who didn't attend today jealous when they see it going through the streams. So we're pretty much coming to the end of block 1. My thanks go to our speakers today. We've to Ed, to Mark, to Jenny, to Paul, and of course Jamie and his storytelling, and the wonderful team, Katie, Radrani, Steve, Jess, Alex, Natasha, somebody I will have forgotten, all behind the scenes who made everything happen. And we will see you again, or some of the team will see you again, in approximately 12 hours for block 2. Do make sure you keep up with us on social media. If you did miss anything, then the recordings will be available as soon as possible. If you've got to this point and you've watched the recording and you've done it all on your own, congratulations. Hi, I hope to see you in person the next time we do an ELTOC. But for now, goodbye, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for joining us at ELTOC Chapter 4. Goodbye for now. See you again soon.